Yes, yes, like all around the whole day.
So surprised.
Hello.
First photo like that, and it's got something like that. This weekend, and so we walked around a whole exhibit, like talent. It's like
I know. I don't have an ounce of that.
I don't
Me
know.
neither.
One,
Nothing.
I'm like square. Everything is a straight line,
Yes.
ruler. That's the extent of my
I'm
drawing.
like
Yeah,
a,
same.
like a math, definite right brain. My
Yes.
sister, my brother, they're definitely.
So funny. Yeah, in the high school, the the kids made all the videos that the interview videos we did for the building last
really?
year when we were advertising. It was the video production class. Yeah. Like the skill.
Do I need to sign this one as well?
That
Yeah.
is
This is different from that
our,
one?
yeah, this is just our release to you.
Yeah, this is for the.
I thought that was it.
It's like, yeah, of course I'll sign.
But I
Hopefully that's okay still.
wholeheartedly endorse you.
Similar title.
I was, yeah.
Are you interested in signing my papers? Yeah. Alright. There's 2 seats. There was a typo in the list. So, yeah, my seat and C.
Thought about
My sister that bought a house in Scarborough. She was telling me about the house. She brought it up and whatever. And I'm like, on this house, so we're selling it. And I'm like, that's like he ran for school board that crazy. School board.
Thank you.
Do I apologize?
it was so high. It's so.
Yeah, that's funny.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She was just like, very good. So I'm like, oh, still doing that.
You're like.
First?
For you.
Sorry, I just sat in my spot.
So we all have our sections. Mine's a parking spot outside.
Yeah, I only needed that.
Yes. Isn't that amazing? Yes. 100%. Yes.
Rushed.
Yes.
Oh, it's
Yes,
Kelly's
today.
daughter now, she's just,
Yes.
can't figure it out. It doesn't matter.
Everybody's probably, like, literally everyone I've spoken to.
It's almost one.
Oh, like, Lord have mercy.
In a puddle of the floor.
Here we are.
I'm there.
Yay.
Don't see anyone come to the parking lot or scurrying in, so.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Our chairman Peter is out of state, actually out of the country for a couple of weeks on vacation, so I'll be leading the next couple of meetings. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you stand? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Cheryl, just a reminder to record.
It is recording now.
Thank you. All right. Adoption of the March 4th meeting. Any comments on the meetings? Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Before we get to this, just a quick note on the agenda. There was an omission inadvertently on today's agenda. We forgot to include public comment. So need to include.
I'll make a motion to amend the agenda to include public comment for the adjournment.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Can you bring up my slides first?
Sure.
Are you on SBLT? Good. Share that.
I will do that.
Slideshow. Thank you. All right, so just a couple of things from the agenda regarding norms and the project plan. Next slide, please. So you want me to try?
No, that's okay. You can just holler next slide and I will make
Okay.
sure I'm paying attention.
So at the SBLT meeting, Peter introduced a revised set of group norms it really just sort of, a lot of it overlaps with the norms that were adopted on the 26th. But these were kind of his language for it. So start on time, end on time, stick to the agenda, be fully present, show interest, participate, concentrate on what's being said, and engage in one conversation at a time. Issues with, yes, sir.
You reading off there?
Yes, sir.
Well, I can't read it from this distance.
So on this side are the norms. These were already adopted on the 26th.
So that's true. It's not large enough for people to see.
Okay.
There's a screen behind you, sir, if that's easier.
You can't change the size.
Yeah.
Turn it off.
You're welcome to share it. Share it out.
So the norms are to start on time. The norms that he's recommended is to start on time, end on time, stick to the agenda, be fully present, show interest, participate, concentrate on what's being said, and engage in one conversation at a time.
Only comment I would have is for putting away distractions such as phone and laptops. Some laptops and phones are used as a device within to monitor or take minutes, so only comment I would make is that, but anyway, if they're being used for the meeting's purpose, they are okay to be out.
Okay. We can adjust that. I need a motion to accept this.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the additional norms as
Second.
presented.
Any discussion?
Just with the addition of being able to use your laptop during the meeting.
Yeah, well, we can make
Accept it
that
that way.
amendment. Yep.
James isn't here. He's here. He just snuck in.
Hey bud, sorry, I didn't see you. Okay. Okay,
Yes.
yes, ma'am.
Not directly related, but I just went on my phone to see if I could read it on Zoom. And Zoom isn't working. Is that something that we can build into the norms? Like, I don't care if it's Zoom or in person, like whatever you guys decide. But the Zoom link is there, but it didn't work last week and it isn't working this week. I just think we should either call that out or.
Yeah, I wasn't aware it wasn't working. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
Says it's 9 people.
So I just tried to, and it says I have to be a presenter to log in. Sounds like that's a me problem. I'll figure it out after hours.
If you saw the emails of me trying to join the leadership meeting,
Yeah, we
it's
all-
not just a you problem. It's- Okay. So there's a motion on the floor that's been seconded to accept.
We do have someone online who's looking to speak.
Yeah, Doug, comments?
You asked if Zoom was working. Zoom is working. I am on. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Still discussion? Okay, Karen Friend, what if we have people who are not following the norms each meeting? Are we going to implement anything or work on that so that we don't get sidetracked every meeting?
So I think that's kind of our responsibility to try to keep us on track and engaged and remind people of the norms that they've agreed to keep us moving forward. I don't think we have a punitive, I think we can.
We're in a police station. Who knows?
Yeah, when I'm, yeah.
Any other discussion on the norms? Okay, we'll move to vote. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. Slide, please. Just a note on team collaboration. We're just doing some house cleaning items right now. There has been a shared SBAC Google Drive that the school team and James has set up. That link will be sent out once everybody has signed the user agreements that Diane has passed out. So as soon as, if you don't sign that, that's no issues, but you won't be able to access the school's Google Drive, which is where a lot of our meeting minutes and the information is going to be stored. With Google Drive, so if you're not used to using collaboration tools, just be aware as you're working in that in subcommittees and things like that, that version control on files matters. So if more than one person is in the file at the same time, you are both editing that and it is saving live. So if you need to work on something that you're maybe not ready to share, you need to save a copy. I find that the best practice is to simply save a copy, use a naming convention that includes the date and your initials so that people know that that's the one that you've edited and it wasn't the original. And then I also recommend when you're in subcommittees, create an archive folder and create a working folder where you're working on documents and then you have the final that are open for consumption kind of stuff. So just some best practices with collaboration tools. We will be using that primarily as we go through. As far as emails, lots of emails are coming into the SBLT and I apologize now for if we're not getting back to you as timely as you'd like. We're figuring ourselves out as well. Moving forward, we'll create a spreadsheet where those questions, particularly if they're substantive that need some research and things like that, we're gonna keep track of all of those in a sheet that will be on the Google Drive. A subject matter expert will be assigned if it requires research from the school team, the town team, anything like that. And then we'll try to give you a timeline. Understand that not all questions are gonna be answerable in the timelines that we have. So we will try to, but that'll kind of give you an idea of where, if you send in a request for information, how we're gonna track those RFIs, as I call them, and get back to you and sort of keep tabs on those things and hold ourselves accountable to make sure we don't skip emails. Jillian, if there's routine questions such as, who's on the SBLT distribution list, what time are we meeting, things like that, Jillian has authority to just respond to those as needed in stride. Questions on collaboration and kind of some of the structure of how we'll move forward?
Charlie, I think the majority of the time, people should try and make the changes within the document, because if you start creating copies, it creates a big problem. And only in extraordinary cases where you want to maybe make something completely different, I'd create a copy. But if you're leaving a comment or making minor changes, just do track changes, keep it within the document.
Yeah, track changes, thank you, that's a good point. So it is, I'm a Microsoft guy, Google Sheets and Google.
A lot of these are work with Microsoft documents in the Google Drive.
So you can track changes in there just the same, thanks. Nick?
Quick question. I didn't know if everyone in the room is entirely familiar with this type of programming or software. Can we just take a show of hands, like who thinks they might need some supplemental assistance with working within these Google Drive and how to operate it?
I've never done it before.
It's been a long.
Okay, so our next few meetings are gonna be subcommittee stuff, and I think we'll have some time for breakout sessions. What I'll do is myself or James will just sort of bring it up. Once you all have access to the drive, we can bring it up, do a little breakout session and kind of work through how you navigate within that. Good?
Charlie, I have a quick question.
Yes.
You do call out the routine questions. How are non-routine questions going to be handled if it's not just a
Yeah.
straight up, I want some information?
Yeah, so depending on the nature of the question, right? So again, if it's sort of a research driven question, an inquiry that needs some time to go back and research, those will get put onto that sheet, get assigned to somebody. We'll try to let you know, hey, we're working on it, we got it. If it's a little bit more of a hot button, hot topic kind of question, we'll come back to the, Jillian will bring those to the SBLT, and we'll kind of discuss and gain some consensus within the group on how we want to respond to that. And then myself or Peter will do those responses. Unless we think it's really a town council type of response required, we might ask Nick to respond, or the Board of Education or something like that. So. Any other questions on, sir, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, that kind of partly is, I guess I was wondering, is the expectation that as we set up the subcommittees, that there'll be a localized inquiry for that research kind of thing that would come from one person rather than a number of different individuals?
Exactly. Yeah, that actually is exactly why some emails haven't been answered, is everyone's like, oh, who's got that one, right? So we're trying to get ourselves organized. Yeah.
So with the subcommittees, I'm assuming that we're putting together a summary every week of whatever we're coming to conclusions with. But it sounds to me like everyone on our subcommittee can edit the document. Is that correct?
If you set it up that way, yeah.
But then, isn't it counterproductive, because you have to come up with one final copy? So everyone has to agree on it.
Which is why I recommend, work, if you are doing it, it's a working draft and you use that naming convention where people know it's working. When you're final, then you save it as a PDF, and the PDF can't be edited anymore. So there's ways around that.
But then
You can also, you can restrict access to certain files within Google Drive. So if you don't want other people to have access to it, you can lock them that way too.
So then with the next week, we would have to agree and make a final copy.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get into the kind of the project planning, sort of what that timeline will look like, to how much time will subcommittees have to do those kinds of things. So, any other discussion on this? Questions? Slide, please. So there's been a lot of discussion about the timeline. is it even feasible to get to a recommendation by May 15th? So I went ahead and I apologize that it's in PowerPoint. I built the project plan in Microsoft Project and then realized probably very few people in the room have licenses for that. So I've just snipped it and screenshot portions and put in here. But essentially what we've come up with is 4 general phases to this project. So currently we're in phase 1, which is baselining. It's all of us getting sort of familiar with the problem, the research that's been done, things like that. After baselining, we move into phase 2, which is analysis. That's where the bulk of the subcommittee work gets done. And then public feedback, and finally, report drafting and submission. In phase, yes, sir.
You said phase 1. Are you talking about the 89-page document? It's an email you sent.
So I'm just talking about how we're gonna do our work in this committee and kind of how we're organized and the structure with which we're gonna work through this problem to try to get to a recommendation in May. I'm sorry, sir.
The Harriman architectural document of the schools.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's a reference document that we'll use.
Yeah, are you referencing the architectural drawings?
Yeah. What's your question about it, sir? Sorry.
What, are you referencing the Harriman drawings at all?
He's talking about what
Are you coming up with a whole new plan?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm simply talking, our work, I've broken our work into 4 phases. So yes, there was previous work that was done that was broken into phases as well, but I'm talking about specifically how we will, over the next 8 weeks, move through this problem set to get to a report at the end. So that architectural study that we've looked at had some different building phases within that as well. That's separate and distinct. That's a reference that we'll look at. That's not, I'm simply referring to our plan of how we're gonna try to get to the end on May 15th. This is just a timeline for us to work towards. So. Absolutely, yep, there is. So phase 1, within the baselining phase, we've already looked at project history, we'll look at enrollment data and facilities deficiencies tonight. We'll create some subcommittees, do school tours. And then the milestone at the end of this phase will be to actually finalize and accept the problem, purpose, and objectives. Next slide, please. When we move into phase 2, which will be the subcommittee work. Right now, I've given us 2 weeks in subcommittee to work through the analytics that, there'll be some homework, frankly, we're not gonna get it all done in this room. But that gets us, that's really the bulk of our work is right there. It's a 28-day phase, mostly in subcommittees. We'll do some workshopping on the 8th of April, where we'll try to address, really come up with what are the various options, not the option we're gonna recommend, but what options through the work of the subcommittees can we come up with that might solve this problem. And then we'll spend 11 days, we'll spend a week or 2 analyzing those options. And then there'll be some presentations of the options slide. And then that, yeah, let's go next slide to phase 3. Well, phase 2 will end, the milestone there will be to submit those options, send those options out for public feedback. So let's say we come up with 4 different potential solutions to the problem. One might be a consolidated school, one might be a 4th primary school, one might be renovations, one might be something totally new and creative that we come up with. We'll send those for public comment. We'll let the town spend a couple weeks chewing on those and giving us some feedback. And then ultimately at the end of that phase in early May, we'll select a recommended option and then move into report writing. Important to note, and James has pointed this out to us, there's no reason not to start drafting. So if you're on the finance subcommittee or you're on the building infrastructure subcommittee, we've started to work on a report structure that those subcommittees, while things are out in public comment or things like that, we can start to populate some drafting into that report. But with the goal being ultimately to finalize that report by May 13th and accept it in this room consensus on the report, and then submit that final recommendation on May 15th. It's a very tight deadline. We've got to hit those marks. We know that. We've talked already to the council members of the team about, we probably might need some extra time. This is an aggressive one, but there is a path to get into May 15th. So I just wanted to lay it out so we can all kind of see how we're gonna go to work. We'll kick off every meeting kind of looking at that top timeline and where are we today, what phase are we in, just as a reminder to kind of stay on point with what we're trying to achieve today. There's a lot of excitement to really get into the nuts and bolts and the weeds and start analytics. But the whole group needs to kind of get baselined at the same level. So that's where we're at today. Yes, ma'am.
I'm having a hard time figuring out how we go from the baselining, where basically we're reviewing all the material that's been created up to this point. The schematics of the existing schools, the enrollment study, and then the next step or the end of that phase is reviewing all the options. Like, when are we going to sit and brainstorm and come up with?
We go back, please. So
Did you say 2 slides?
Yeah, the end of phase 1 of baselining is just defining the problem and objectives. Where are we gonna go, right? So we've drafted that a couple of times. We haven't accepted it yet. And we're gonna try to adopt that at the end of the baselining phase. And then when you get into phase 2, that's when we're doing all the analytics that you're talking about. And then that work mostly happens, that substantive work will happen in subcommittees. So looking at building schematics, there's a building infrastructure subcommittee. So those subcommittees are lined out here. So there's a enrollment data validation subcommittee, business case review subcommittee, finance subcommittee, benchmarking, which will define sort of what does the school need to have in it. Programming needs, building infrastructure. Those are the ones so far that we've come up with, and there might be more that we identify that we need. But that substantive work and that, you know, kind of in the weeds deep dive happens there.
How do you take that? And if you have different people working on different committees, and there's no point where everyone gets together and figures out, like, these buildings could take a second floor or whatever, they're beyond repair. And so we know we have to do something, or when does this creative thinking come about where you talk about creative options, or this has never even been discussed, or?
So we'll have a few meetings of subcommittee work. Those subsequent meetings will start with subcommittee report outs. This is a macro agenda. So each meeting will have a micro agenda where we, you know, as we work through it, we go, okay, hey, next week we really need to understand, can we add a second floor to these buildings? And the building infrastructure subcommittee will be responsible to go do that homework and come back and report out on those things.
Charlie, I think to answer your question, it's really phase 3. So phase 2 is like analyzing the baseline. Phase 3, it should be kind of option brainstorming and evaluation.
So identifying the range of options, right, before you go to public feedback?
Yeah, so at the end of phase 2 is identifying the options, right? And then we send that out for public feedback in phase 3. Does that answer your question?
Well, it does somewhat, but would it make sense if people happen to, I've got a creative option, and I don't think this committee, I know the old committee has never reviewed it properly. And I'd like to submit it for someone, and so that it could be something that is maybe in the back of the minds of the committee when they're reviewing all of the data. Is it possible that if people on this committee have some ideas now, because they've been paying attention for the last year and happen to, you know, really know a lot of the facts, that we could submit it and it would be taken seriously? And where would we do that?
The building options workshop, right?
Right, that's really what this workshop, we'll have an entire session, a whole meeting dedicated to workshopping what are the various options based on what the subcommittees find. You know, we might
So
after.
it's one meeting to
No,
talk
I
about
think
them?
we'll have those discussions throughout, in the subcommittees and whatnot. I absolutely don't take from this that we're trying to stifle any ideas. This is all about bringing new ideas to the front. When and how, I think as we move into the more micro level of those agendas, we will figure that out. The purpose of this meeting and the next one is really just to get everybody close to where you are in your research and knowledge, so. I see you and I saw you, but this gentleman over here had his hand up for quite a while, sir.
You mentioned about can, use the word can. And your statement, can we to do the test analysis of this. I'm saying, the report that you've already sent us, gave us, you know.
It did.
89 page. Actually, tells us a lot. I'm surprised we're not tearing that apart.
We will. I think that the building infrastructure subcommittee, that will be a big part of their work is to tear that apart.
I'm very familiar with that architectural company. I worked with them for many, many years.
Yeah.
And I was in a different industry.
Yeah.
And I understand the process. And I think we gotta kind of follow that and tear it apart.
I agree. Yep. And I think, and we will. And that's really where the bulk of that subcommittee work will happen.
Well, the reason I say that is because it went out the vote.
Yep.
And that's what they're shot down. This is, we need to find out something that's less costly to present to the voters. And I think that's the object of this committee.
Yep.
We send out something that's more expensive. Guess what? It's not gonna pass. And the children need.
Sorry, just a quick clarifying question, because I can't really see this stuff and I'm really hoping I'll get to see it like after the meeting. Can you just, are we meeting like every other week in the large group, or are we meeting every single week in these subcommittees? Can you just the broad strokes?
I think that this is something, you know, we kind of threw a dart on the wall, right, with this, just to get us a timeline and a roadmap. I think that this will change as we go, right? As we say in the military, no plan survives first contact, right? So I don't expect that this is written in stone. And so just because we know what a time commitment this is for everybody, and we're all volunteer residents, right? This isn't our job. We're gonna try to keep the work to the Monday night 2-hour meeting session, which means that, you know, we'll do some housekeeping at the beginning of a meeting. We might, you know, have some substantive large group discussion and then break into subcommittees. But with the principal goal of trying to do the bulk of our work in subcommittee in this room in this meeting on Monday nights. And if we need more time, we'll add more time. And I think the council has already indicated to us that we shouldn't have a problem if we need to request that. Sir?
Hi, Carol Godrow. Could we structure the subcommittees, let's say, set a goal of structuring the subcommittees by next Monday? And now my idea of structuring the subcommittees might be the same as the leaders, but I think that if we could structure the subcommittees by, we know we need a school or schools, okay? And then there's gonna be, in my mind, a subcommittee for pursuing the enrollment through 2028 or whatever. There's gonna be a subcommittee for identifying the price per square foot that we wanna spend. There's gonna be a subcommittee for requirements for the students based on state requirements. So I guess what I'm asking for is a structured list of solid, and they can be changed next Monday, but a solid list of subcommittees, so I can look down through there and see whether or not I want to be part of the building, of designing the building, or pursuing square foot cost or whatever. So for me right now, I don't have a good feel for why I'm here. So if we could establish the structure of the subcommittees, then we know what to sign up for.
Yes, sir. And so, last week's agenda had a list of subcommittees, potential subcommittees. I included those in this. And this isn't an agenda or anything. This was just sort of for me to track, where we're at and where we're going. So I think we have 5 subcommittees that we've identified so far with can you go back one slide? I think I was actually hoping that at the end of today, we would create subcommittees. Sorry, one more slide. That is hard to read. I apologize.
It's item 7 on tonight's agenda.
Yeah, so it's actually on tonight's agenda to try and create those subcommittees. So
we could get a look at what the leadership feels are specific subcommittees, then we can input those for either add to them or whatever.
And they're actually, the ones that are on here are almost exactly what you just said.
Someone online that has a question.
Yep, there's a question online.
Brittany, go ahead.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, I just more wanted to reiterate that I think this PowerPoint that you have is more a rough draft, and I think we're getting a little bit too particular about it. As you had stated, it is going to change as things and topics come about that are a little more intense, I will say, for lack of better words. I don't know if like timing this stuff, like I work at 1 o'clock in the morning and I get home at 9, and like so my time here is very valuable, and I would like to see things progress. It's, like you have 7 things on here to discuss, and I feel like we're still on topic 1, and it's been a little bit of time here. So I don't know if we can maybe time the like review of things, and when we get here at 6, and then kind of if after half an hour we're still all not on the same page, maybe we just write it down and we send it in an email to everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Brittany. I agree. And thanks for reiterating. This is, like I said, just sort of a first stab of, there is a path to get to May 15th. We have a plan to get there. I'm gonna take one more hand, and then to Brittany's point, I really do think we need to move on. Vanessa.
This will be quick, but if this will be addressed later, just say so, but I think it'd be really helpful to understand like what are the key deliverables and questions that we want the subcommittees to answer, so that we can actually sort of ascribe to which one.
I think we will have that on, when we get to that agenda point, so. So, sir, one last.
Yeah, my name is Don St. Germain. So this feels very amorphous to me. I'm kind of a concrete sort of guy, and I have trouble seeing how this is gonna all come together. Can I suggest a potential alternative path that may be crazier than this one? But it seems like, where I would point to this is I would point to our developing 2 or 3 models within the first half of our discussions, so that we can then, I'm not being very articulate, but I think we're gonna have a unified school. We're probably gonna try and price out, right? We're gonna have a one with multiple schools. We're gonna try and price out. We may have a third completely novel thing to do. I think it would be easier to communicate and make progress if we divide not according to the subcommittees you've outlined, but according to 3 working groups, each of which would come up with a model for that particular system. There'd be a unified model, a multiple model, and maybe some other wonderful thing. For a unified system, we have a fantastic start, which was the last project that was discarded. Tremendous amount of work went into that. There's a tremendous amount of knowledge. If we're going to consider a unified program, why don't we start with that one and start to pare it down? And then the other team can be working on a 3 or 4 school program. And then they can present those and make them and move them forward. I just don't see how you're going here, how the communication is going to take place. It just seems
So,
Crazy.
yeah, thank you for that. It's a good point. And I think that the risk with that is that we limit ourselves to just those three options. And
No, because we start in this room defining what the 2 or 3 options will be.
but I don't know that everybody knows what those options might be until we have a chance to really look at the data.
That's the whole point. We educate ourselves about what's been done before, as the gentleman talked about. There's an 80-page document out there that has a tremendous amount of information in it. As a group, we do that, and then we have a discussion and say, we're gonna go this way, and this way. We're gonna price them out. We're gonna see what's gonna really make sense, and then hone in on one if we have to, just if the deliverable is a single plan.
So 2 people are gonna talk now that were instrumental in developing that 89-page document. And I think that we'll get a much broader understanding of that to help inform how we go forward from here. So I'm gonna close that portion of the discussion out. Yes, ma'am.
One more online. Do you wanna close it?
Yeah, we gotta move on. We're way past. So sorry for whoever's online, but we're gonna move on. Please email me your question or about the plan and the roadmap, and we'll address it. So I believe our next item is presentation of the facility deficiencies by Todd Jepson. Todd, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Time expectations for.
Yeah. So Todd is, we have 45 minutes set for Todd. I think your presentation will be shorter than that, then we'll have some time for Q&A. So we will, it's 6:38 now, so we will move off of this topic at 45 minutes from now.
Just a final comment in that regard. We fully expect there'll be much more detailed conversation and interest. We would expect those detailed conversations to happen at subcommittee level, based on the structure that's been put forward. So don't take this as the final. This is intended to provide a baseline understanding for the full group, and then it'll be a much deeper dive for those that really want it.
And I'll be timing till 40 minutes. I'll give a 5-minute warning before we move on.
I could just make a quick suggestion. You may want to write your questions down as you go through. Sometimes it's hard to remember. You might trigger a thought in your head, just write them down as you go through. If we're out of time at the end of our session, there's always a possibility you can email it or submit it to the subcommittee so they can get your question answered.
We all set? Hi, my name is Todd Jepson. I'm the Director of Facilities for the school department. I started working here in 2010, so I had the benefit of going through the Wentworth Building Committee and then this past one. And I'm here to just try to give you a baseline overview of the school facilities as they exist today. I won't necessarily always talk about them in terms of them being deficiencies per se, but just this is what they are and this is how they are. So I'll get started here. I just wanted to get some pictures. I'm going to start with a quick overview of the middle school. Many of you, if you've driven by there, see that it was built in 1996. It's about 110,000 square feet at the main building. It sits on a lot that's largely wooded, about 16 acres. The white building in the picture there is a cluster of 12 modular classrooms. They were put in 4 classroom modules at a time. And the years listed there, starting in 2000, another 4 in 01, and 4 more in 08. And then there's an older building behind that was purchased from the Wyndham School Department that is currently just a storage building. It's not on a foundation, it's in rough shape, but it's serving that purpose right now.
How many kids are in that school?
How many people how many
In
students
the
in the 6th grade?
modular,
Like,
the entire 6th grade,
entire
so it'd
sixth
be
grade.
about 230 students
230 students, 6, 12.
in that white building.
Yeah, 12 more.
Yep. So this is the middle school Google Earth shot, just to kind of show you the site, how it's laid out. I'll come back to it to talk about site conditions. But in general, the big teardrop you see with kind of 2 loops on it is the one way in and one way out. And if you've ever been down there around 7:30, you will know it is not a pleasant experience. It's very, very tight, particularly since COVID, when more folks are driving their kids to school on their own. It's a tight, again, a tight setup. There are 2 playing fields on the left and right of the building. There's a large wooded area that has a wide array of scattered wetlands and a vernal pool back there. It was once considered a site for development of another building. Over the years, land just keeps getting wetter, and there's a couple of patches of upland that aren't really big enough for a large school to be placed back there without paying a lot of money to fill wetlands. I'm gonna talk about the issue, so I may come back to this drawing, so if you'll just bear with me. I'm just gonna go through each of the schools if I could. Pleasant Hill School is the second oldest original building of the schools, second to the 1953 high school. All 3 of the elementary schools were renovated and added onto and opened in 1993. So you might see a reference to 92, 93. Any project of that size, it takes a couple of years to get it done. So, but each of them, if you visit any of those schools, you'll see the similarities in terms of their design, shape, layout, and so forth. All of these schools have modular classrooms. All 3 schools have the first sections attached, and then at 8 corners, there's an unattached cluster of classrooms as well. Pleasant Hill is the smallest lot size. It's only 4.7 acres. It's tightly surrounded by neighborhoods, homes. The modular classrooms were put on in 2002, and the total square footage, including the modules, is about 24,000, almost 25,000 square feet. We added 2 more to the 2 modulars that were first put on in 2020, and they're blended in. It's, if you're looking at this picture here, these were the original 2 that were put on, and these were the 2 that were put on in 2020. I'll talk a little bit about those heating units after too, if you want to be really bored, but it's interesting information if you're a facilities nerd like I am. The rooms range in size from 688 square feet to 740 square feet. The Department of Education recommendation is 1,000 square foot classrooms for kindergarten and 800 square foot for grades 1 through 5, actually all the way up through the middle school too. This cafe and gymnasium, which is this section of the building here, is 2,400 square feet. So it serves phys ed as well as lunch and larger group meetings if there are any. That's the site plan. It got a little stretched out when I put it in there, but you can see all around the entire school, there are houses, and there's this clump of woods here, but you can't see because Google Earth for some reason must have been a really old shot they took. The land really slopes off into the woods. There's a pretty steep bank, and we had to kind of build it up to get that last set of horribles on it. And the playground, which is sort of shaded by these trees, is right here, and it's very small. And they also play in a little lawn area over here, which is, again, extra room to run around. And then behind the building, up here, in those areas that look like a parking area, that was the paved playground area that had hopscotch, foursquare, and so forth.
How many students are in the portals, in the 4 portals?
It's the kindergarten wing, and there are 4 classrooms. I don't know the exact enrollment, but there are
About 70 students.
about 70 students.
Can I pass a motion or put one to the table, whatever, that we don't ask questions during the?
Yeah, you can ask them at the end. I have a slide that says
Respect for the presenter time and everyone else's time.
I'll just write it down and then we'll get to it.
I don't think we need a motion. I think we can all just kind of agree. We're good.
8 Corners School, originally built in 1959. Again, added onto and renovated and opened in 1993. There were modular classrooms. There are 10 modular classrooms in this facility. There were 4 put on in '02, 2 more added in '08, and then 2 more in 2019 and 2 more in 2020. Those were added on to, and they're not connected, they're not attached directly to the building. I'll talk a tiny bit about that, but in general, it was a complication with fire code attaching it at the time. So anyway, this building, again, is on a fairly small lot. It's about 5.8 acres. There's a large hill behind it. It has a nice look to the site when you look at it from an aerial view. Again, just shy of 30,000 square feet. I've heard people saying those aren't really trailers. They're not mobile. They're not portable. That's how they arrive.
On wheels.
They're a trailer.
Yeah.
And the 2 classrooms come together in 2 big, long halves, and we put them together.
That's 1/2 of the plan.
So that's 1/2 of a 2 classroom module right there. And so the way they're set up, I just kind of like this picture because we almost took out that light pole getting them in there, but there's a classroom, and a hallway in between. And they come together. And when you put these in, you try to make them equivalent to the existing classrooms. So at this age group, you want to try and have a bathroom in or nearby, or at least shared for the little kids. You want to have to be roughly the same size and so forth. In some cases, depending on what you like, these are air conditioned. The regular classrooms in the older part of the building are not air conditioned. So if you like air conditioning, you'll like these. If you don't, you won't. It just depends on what you like. So here's the site, 8 corners. This darker section roof is the original building with a line there. In 92 and 3, they added the gym and office area and this wing of classrooms. This is the first section of modules, 2 classrooms at a time. This 4 went on first, these last 2, and then in 19 and 20, those 4 classrooms. We also added this parking lot in 2019 when we created the pad for the portables. These are standing on a pad. These are on a 4-foot frost wall foundation. This parking lot was added and is now an open space for parents to be able to safely drop off their children. So they come in here, they can actually park and they walk in this little path and enter the back side of the gym right there. It originally started out where the parents were dropping off here and it got complicated. So they switched it. But in essence, this has the best site. The most complicated piece is this is where the buses come through. And you also have cars parked and people trying to cross in front of the buses, and it's a little chaotic there as well. So it's not ideal, but they've made it work. It has a pretty nice sized playground in this upper area, this big tan section. That's the playground. Ideally, it sits quite a bit above the building elevationally, so it's kind of a switchback path, that triangular shaped path. And we had a child in a wheelchair, and it's tough going, especially in the winter, to get a child in a wheelchair to the playground. And they have this play area where there's grass and so forth off the wood chipped area. But again, it's kind of lumpy, kind of old hayfield. Used to be a pig farm. There was a pig farm there before 8 Corners was there. Kind of interesting to read about the history of these places. Blue Point School is the newest, if you will, of the 3. It was originally built in '65. Main building is 26,200 square feet. Again, added onto at the same time frame. Has 4 attached modular classrooms on a foundation, frost wall, that add about 3,570 square feet. Modulars were added in '01. This seems like the largest lot. It's 12.2 acres, but it's not a nice lot because it's a long skinny lot, and then off the back there's a steep slope that runs almost immediately into wooded wetlands. And this Little League field, whoever did that, and you'll see a reference to it in my notes as we come by, they cut down all the trees and buried the stumps there. So now we have sinkholes all over that field because the stump piles are rotting and caving in. But anyway, that's just another side comment. By 1965, when they built this building, they finally realized we need a big cafeteria and gym on there. So they actually built it in 65 with a cafeteria and gym. Whereas Pleasant Hill and Eight Corners didn't have that big building start, that big room. And then in 92, we added this area. And then at the very end are the 4 portables. There are 2 playgrounds here. There's a little playground for kindergartners. And then down in that hole, it's a little tan, I can't quite reach it, is another playground that is really down low, surrounded by woods. If you've ever been there, they're very buggy, mosquito-y places. But the property line kind of runs along here, down there, squares off, and then comes back on the far side of the Little League field. Parking is reasonably adequate, but it gets tight in the winter when you have no place to put snow. Again, surrounded by residential neighbors. Buses come in here, drop off and leave. Parents can drop off here, but again, have to cross the bus loop with their children to get into the building. And then deliveries also come in here, which is the kitchen. Okay, let's see. I'll stand back now so I can read. I kind of went through most of this, but in general, the classroom sizes range for the K2 schools. The original, they're all slightly different. The original building classrooms are 740 square feet. The addition in 93, they're about 752 square feet. The old modulars are about 706 square feet, and the new modular is 700 square feet. Cafeteria gym's 2,400 at Pleasant Hill. Eight Corners is 2,408. Blue Point is 2,560 square feet. Those are the cafe gyms. The reason the new modular is like 6 feet smaller classroom is they made the bathroom bigger, simply. And he's just sucked up a few extra square feet. Again, Pleasant Hill is the smallest site bordered by developed neighborhoods, which is a blessing and a curse, frankly. It's a blessing because you always have people keeping an eye out on your school for you. It's a curse because sometimes we can be bothersome to neighbors. I can't say anything other than, balls getting kicked into your yard, the kids are loud. The dumpster guy shows up to dump the dumpster at 4 in the morning. It can be a loud place. It has a very small playground. We took the hard surface play area for added parking. Because when you add classrooms, you add teachers. Teachers need a place to park. The site slopes off steeply in the rear, requiring fill if we're gonna do anything else. The same entrance for staff, parents, and buses in terms of the drive entrance. And any additions, I'm gonna say this for all 3, any additions to these sites would be what I call a give to get. You have to give something up to get something. So you might give up parking to add building or give up playground. It feels like that in these small site places. Same with Eight Corners. It's built into a hill. Playground accessibility is difficult, as I mentioned. There's visible ledge in the grass area adjacent to the playground. And we added parking in 2019 for separates, as I mentioned. Blue Point, difficult site for expansion due to wetlands. Even though it's largest, it's just tough. It's just a tough site. Middle school, I think I've said this all. Original building, back in the day, that was a state-funded school. And speaking to my formerly resident historian, Joanne Sizemore, who was the principal there for many years, I believe 700 square feet was the DO recommendation at the time. So they were within that then. The modulars classrooms are 742 square feet each, and 16-acre site, as I said, which has its own set of wetlands. What doesn't have a wetland in Scarborough? It's just a wetland place. Middle school, it is fully air conditioned. I found out from my predecessor that the decision to air condition it came halfway through the project, which is why they did it the way they did it, because anyone with a brain would never have done it that way. And I say that because maintaining that is ridiculous. There's 123 heat pumps in there. We've replaced all but 24 of them since I've been here. It's just poorly engineered. It's engineered to just make it happen, but not to consider servicing it. We have a lot of climate complaints in that building. It's difficult to maintain and keep consistent comfort, especially if you have densely populated classrooms. You have 20 to 24 kids in a classroom there, I'm guessing. So you bring in 20 little sweaty teenagers and they make heat, and it's just tough. Natural gas boilers, there are 2 of them, 2 big HB Smiths. They heat a core loop that then send that out to the heat pumps, and the heat pumps do the rest. They either heat it more and get it warm, or cool it down and get it cool. It's not an ideal situation. The cooling tower outside is a big tower that cools that loop in the summer, and that fluid flows around to all those heat pumps. And again, lots of piping, lots of ductwork, lots of fans blowing, lots of pumps pushing things around. It's just a really complicated system compared to a modern air-conditioned building like Wentworth that comparatively has 11 heat pumps for that giant building. And they're all in one room, so you can service them all right there. The cooling tower is getting old. We've replaced quite a few components in it in the last 14 years. But again, everything has its lifespan, and eventually things just start to rot out. So you're gonna have to replace the whole thing eventually. It has a digital mechanical control system that we've replaced in the last 2 years. That's reasonably up to date. 3-phase power, it's nearing some limitations because we've added all these things like these modulars. And we have some transformers that are showing signs of loss of voltage, and that's gonna be needed to be addressed soon. And the generator just died this year, so we have to replace that, which is a backup generator. The 6th grade portable is completely at the limit for electrical service. We can't add anything else to that building. We won't have any power if we do. We'll have to put in a new power service if anything's added there. All plumbing fixtures are aged. There are no local shutoffs, so if a toilet breaks and you gotta shut the water off, you shut it off the whole building. That's what you get for state funding. I don't know. Not enough restroom capacity in the portable. If you go to the portable, 230 kids in there. The girls have 4 toilets and the boys have 1 and a urinal or 2. That's it. And the staff has 1 toilet. So primary schools, main building, no air conditioning in the main building, only the main office, and the portables have air conditioning. They have oil boilers, 5 of the 6 forced hot water, that's FHW. Forced hot water boilers need replacing now. They're 32 years old. We've kept them maintained. They run. They're not efficient and they burn oil, but they work. And you'll see them in my capital budget requests. It does at 8 Corners and 8 Corners got the new digital mechanical controls upgraded last summer, and Pleasant Hill and Blue Point are scheduled for their upgrades this summer. And people say, what the heck is that? That's so you can adjust and control the temperature. When we closed the old Wentworth, I'm a scavenger by nature. We scavenged all the controls out of the old Wentworth, and I've been using them as spare parts for these old schools for the last 10 years. Because I knew they were obsolete at the time. And we've run out of our scavenged parts and it's time to replace them. So that's just a side note. Forced hot water heat piping runs underneath the bookcases, and there are grates on the windowsills, just inside the windowsills. They inevitably get covered over with books and supplies, and it's just an odd setup. Modulars have propane fired rooftop units or barred, those wall hung units. They're very inconsistent. They're either really hot and cold, or they're just one or the other. It's just hard to keep them leveled off because they're just dumping heat into this little space, and then it goes off, and then it's just odd and inconsistent. The fresh air supply, it's really important when you have 20 to 22 kids in a classroom. They don't get sleepy, CO2, they don't want that built up. So when you're dumping fresh air in there, you then have to temper it and heat it, and it's a climate comfort, occupant comfort thing. Challenge. Middle school, building envelope, it's the skin of the building, the walls, the windows, the doors, the roof. We've pieced away replacing major roof sections, more to come in a phased approach. Windows are showing signs of heat loss. We've begun a phased replacement of the big storefronts. If you look at the middle school, the silver grayish ones are new, the minty green ones are old. It's just the way it works. The modulars, from an insulation standpoint, they're 2x4 walls. They have approximately R13, it might be R11. I didn't tear one open to look, but it's not enough. Should be 23, 28. The roof has been replaced on those modulars. And insulation is added whenever we do. It's a heavy duty polyiso insulation. The vinyl siding and soffit is showing its age. It's a 24-year-old set of buildings pretty much. And then the ADA ramp, again, we replaced it. It's new, it's aluminum. It's not gonna fall apart, but it's a challenge. Maine winters, they're fun, right? Wheelchairs are tough to go over those. It really ought to be covered to keep the kids from slipping and falling, and the staff. The primary schools roof sections, again, we replaced those in phases as well. Original buildings in the 57, 59, 65, there's no insulation in the walls. It's just brick and block with an airspace, and that counts as R3. No insulation. 1993 editions have R13 or 15 is 3.5 inch of batt insulation, fiberglass insulation in the additions. The modern recommendation is R23 in the walls and R38 in the roof. It might have R20 in the roof where we've done replacements and added another layer of that foam insulation, and less in the areas that aren't replaced. Exterior siding, if you take a close look, and trim, again, needing replacement. A lot of this stuff was deferred as we talked about whether we were gonna keep or replace these buildings. So again, we'll get going on some of these things in the meantime anyway, because it's just needed. And then paint and stain. Safety and security. Big conversation these days. 6th grade modular is very problematic and a liability. The kids walk back and forth across a long path, if I can get to it here. Oh, there it is. They walk from right here to the main entrance, this whole section, every day, several times when they go to phys ed, lunch, art, STEM, music. Every time they go, they're walking back and forth on an open crosswalk, and they're crossing the main delivery route for service and delivery trucks. They're crossing right across that. That to me is a challenge that is one that it's just a difficult thing to keep up with from a maintenance standpoint. Oops. I'm on my last slide, so. Students walk across delivery. Traffic pile up at the beginning, I've already spoken about that. A real secondary entrance or exit road is really needed on that site. We've talked about it for years. It's just difficult to do because of wetlands and disruption of play fields and so forth. Current bus loop and student drop-off loop are inadequate for current needs. Parking can be problematic for events beyond the school day. Try parent-teacher conferences. Primary schools, safety and security. 8 Corners and Pleasant Hill have no secure entrance vestibules. Current offices, gym, cafe design make it challenging and expensive to add on for now. You can't just stick a doghouse on the outside and say, that's our secure entrance. It really needs to be integrated into the main office so that you have someone granting or not granting access to visitors. That's what secure vestibules mean. The bus loop at 8 Corners and Blue Point, they go right through the parking and crosswalk areas, which is not perfect. Pleasant Hill is very congested. There's no official student drop-off area other than the parking lot. We've kind of made this little island for the people who drive around. They're making it work. They're doing a great job making it work, but it's a challenge. It takes a lot of staff to direct traffic. And then the neighborhood weekend activities, I talked about that already, and I think public safety is very aware. So that's, again, very fast. I appreciate you just letting me talk like an auctioneer. And now I'll take questions, I guess. So, yes.
Yeah, maybe I fell asleep for a minute or so, but I haven't seen.
What?
I haven't seen Wentworth presented up here. Why? It's never been in any of the proposals before, and yet Wentworth can be expandable to 8 to 10 or I think it was 8 to 10 classrooms. It was designed that way.
Yeah. I was asked.
Why aren't we hearing about that as a possible partial solution?
That's your job. as this committee.
Yeah,
I was
but
asked
it's
to
never up here on any of the schools. What about Wentworth?
So Todd was asked to present about the deficiencies of the schools that we've been looking at. So that, if we,
I'm
you know,
happy to
if
do
we
it.
want to
I
do
can
that,
talk
we
forever
can do
about
that
that.
another evening, but that wasn't asked of him for
Okay,
this.
see, it's been a hot button with me
Mhm,
in the old plan because it was never mentioned
mhm,
as a possible part of a solution.
right.
It actually was, because we were gonna move the whole sixth grade there and reduce that issue, but.
I thought that'd be a great idea, what you just said.
So,
But the thing is, it was never in that 84 or 119 page thing that was put out by Hallam or whatever they are.
so just to keep us on track, we've got about 15 minutes for questions. Things like that, that's a great question. What I'd ask is, we send some of those questions to the Building Infrastructure Subcommittee to be formed today, and then they will have direct communications with Todd as we go through our work to try to understand what are the potential solutions within the existing infrastructure. Is that fair?
Just one other question with Todd. Could you provide an estimate for repair, replace, whatever? You've done a great job here. I did not fall asleep. Of everything that's wrong. And you've been doing this for a long time, so you might have some kind of financial estimate of what it would take to put in all new bathrooms or whatever else, all of that good stuff. I'm not suggesting right now.
Yeah, I mean, I could do that, and I typically do it annually in my capital budget, because the challenge for us is getting the work done that we get the money for.
I think that would be helpful for us.
Yes, so it's these narrow windows of time in which you can squeeze, like reflooring an entire area or, tearing apart something and putting it back together. It's, it's an 8-week window in the summer that you have or whatever. So, but yes, I mean, we can look at all my capital requests for the past 14 years, and then we can prognosticate out to say, we know this is coming due. Like I said, with the middle school boilers, they're gonna hit 30 in 2 years. So, wow, look at the questions. Let's go way in the back, Mr. Greenlee, and then I'll come forward.
The 4 schools, can you categorize, prioritize, I guess, which ones provide or have the biggest traffic problems?
Biggest traffic in terms of automobile?
They all 4 do technically, right?
Yeah, I was
For
gonna
some
say,
reason.
you'd probably be able to give me a better answer there, but
That's for you though.
Yeah. I'd say probably 8 corners, although with the new parking lot, we've alleviated some of that, but it's just congested.
The traffic is still backed up on Muzzy.
Yep.
On certain days, early release
And Pleasant Hill, if you go there at the right moment, you're not getting in. You're just not. And so I cringe when I get a call at, 8:15 in the morning, you have to come over and see, I can't get there.
And
I have
the
to
middle
park in
school,
the neighborhood and run through the
the middle
yard.
school still, some can be backed out on the 114 on some mornings as well, right?
The traffic in Scarborough on Route 1 has gone outrageous.
Yes, sir.
Do we know the average age of one of the modular classrooms? And then if so, do we also know the expected life cycle of a typical classroom? Not necessarily just related to mechanical systems and all that, but just in general.
So you asked a question where, I grew up on a potato farm in the county, so we just made stuff work forever. But 10 years is what most people would be the max life for the use of a portable. They're designed to be temporary solutions. We've made them permanent. We've done interior renovations, we've replaced flooring and painted and changed doors out. We've just made that one last. I don't think, you wouldn't necessarily tear those down and add new portables. It just wouldn't make sense. You'd probably just gut from within and, so. But yeah, I mean, if it were me, I'd say if you get 10, 12 years, you're doing really well. We've done supremely well with the ones we've had again, it costs money to keep them up. Yes, no way back.
Thank you. So I got 2 questions. One, the portables that we have, were they purchased used from other communities? You mentioned the one from Wyndham, but just the other ones. And the second question is, my understanding that modular units sort of vary. You have the 10-year lifespan modular units, which is the ones we appear to have. Then there's other communities like in Massachusetts and across the country that invested in like these 50-year modular units, which are sort of the in-between model of the brick and mortar versus the cheap ones.
Yeah.
So the second question I had was, has the town ever explored sort of that newer modular style that has that 50-year lifespan? In the course of its discussions over the last, I don't know, since you've been here since 2010?
Let me answer your first question. To my knowledge, all of the portables that we have, with the exception of that back storage one, were new when they were put in. And the ones that I put in, the six classrooms that I have had put in, those are all brand new. And the answer about the longer life modulars, I have not done deep exploration into those. But I know they're out there. You don't see a lot of them in northern New England. So I guess the answer is I don't know enough about them yet. And I don't know people who have used them and had, great success or whatever, or failures, I don't know. Yes.
I just wanted to point out that in Julie's 2016 long-range facilities plan, option C was replace all existing modulars with new modular construction of a more permanent kind. So it was something that was considered, but I guess we decided not to pursue it. And this was Harriman that put this together.
I was not in support of that. So, yes, sir.
With regard to the modulars, and how they interface with the buildings, the schools.
Yes.
For the sake of our looking at different considerations. Can some of the modulars in some of the facilities be made permanent building as part of the facility?
They kind of are now, if you look how they are. They're attached with a breezeway. And oftentimes when we give a tour, people don't even realize they're walking into a portable, with the exception that the ceiling gets a little lower. So the ones that are on frost walls and have a breezeway in them, they're kind of inside the lousy,
But going forward from square one, and we don't know where we're gonna land. But going from ground zero, if any particular committee looked at the modulars, is there a possibility that a modular could be made a permanent structure, maybe even have a second floor on it?
I don't know the answer of the second floor. I would have to look at the foundation structural design, because they were done before I was here.
Yeah, it would require, I'm sure, a new foundation.
But I can tell you can't put a second floor on the existing modules because it's just 2x4 walls. You'd have to tear them completely off and then go up. And that was actually part of one of the options for 4 schools that Harriman presented, that you tear off those modulars and put a 2-story unit.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. If we looked at it from the standpoint of modular isn't there.
Yep.
We'd have to put in a foundation and go 2 stories or whatever.
Yes.
But
So that
seems like that's an option.
That is an option.
Okay.
Yep. It is an option. Yes.
You mentioned,
I see your hand back.
go ahead, take that one.
All right, James?
Yes, thank you. Going to delivery trucks real quick. Forgive me if I missed it. Do you have an estimated quantity of delivery trucks that arrive at each school? I won't say per day, per week. I guess how frequent are the deliveries?
I don't have that number in my head. I could probably get it. And most of the deliveries, we really are kind of strict, like they have to be in before X or not until Y, because we know there's traffic there. But inevitably, some guy who's a new driver and he'll show up late, come careening in, and you're like, but I can get an estimate for you at the middle school. Right off the top of my head, I'd say probably half a dozen a day. But again, one of them's the milk guy that shows up at 5 and there's nobody here, so.
Yes, good. And just one follow on to that. Is there, how long are the lunch periods at the middle school? Start and then finish?
25 minutes.
25
I guess, what time of day does it start and then what time of day does it end?
I'm gonna approximate somewhere between 11 and 1.
Okay, thank you.
You have 2 online as well.
Okay. Once again,
You mentioned that most of all the existing sites were basically give to get. Do we have geotech reports available for all the sites? And if so, are they available?
Did you say geotech?
Yeah.
I have the geotech reports that I had done to put in the modulars that have been done in my time. I could, knowing my predecessor, I bet there's geotech for the ones he put in, because he's a modular master, so. So I could probably come up with them. I have the RW Gillespie reports that I did for mine.
Yeah, that'd be great. And then do you know if, like the past option that was put forward at referendum, did anyone explore, you know, potential pass via ground improvements to make, you know, these like the wetlands buildable, or did it go that far?
On these sites,
Yeah.
only at the middle school, to my knowledge, is the only site that we considered filling, you know, paying to fill wetlands when that was an option, and that piece of land behind there, or even putting in the access road out to Sawyer possibly was considered. Those are the only times. I don't think we talked about filling wetlands at any of the other cases.
Not the primaries.
Because the biggest one, there aren't wetlands necessarily at Pleasant Hill or Eight Corners. But the one down Blue Point, it's just so low, you'd have to haul in millions of yards of fill to get it up, sure.
Or you know, I'm even talking like more of like related to rammed aggregate piers, like that type of like deep foundation.
Yeah, no, we didn't do that.
I would just add, though, I can't say that it's absolute or binding. I do recall distinctly when Wentworth was built, there were wetland filling that had to occur. And frankly, on the campus, we filled wetlands for decades through the proper permit process. I do distinctly remember DEP said, enough, we're not gonna let you do any more on this campus. So again, I don't think we have that in writing, that it's not absolute, but I think that is an uphill battle.
I know there's questions online, I don't mean to jump in front of it, but just since we're talking about wetlands, can you guys clarify, since we live in a marsh, are these forested wetlands or shoreline wetlands? Different.
Well, at middle school, it's forest.
Okay.
Wetlands, and we don't have any shoreline wetlands.
We don't have any shoreline? Okay, thanks.
I promise, sorry, wait, online
Yeah.
first? Yeah, okay, you tell me the order.
Brittany, go ahead.
Really fast, 5-minute warning on questions. Sorry, Brittany.
That's okay. I just had one more looking into the future if we are, well, while we're discussing this, with the climate that we are in, given the, not to be a downer on this meeting, but the school shootings that have been going around the country, what kind of safety, I guess, restrictions are in the buildings and in the modulars, since everyone seems to be focused on modulars? I just don't, I don't see that as a permanent solution because they're a trailer. And two, I just don't see them as a safety solution for our children. God forbid something like that did happen.
That's a great question, and I don't have all the perfect answers because it's a completely imperfect situation. I will say that since that time, we have secured the front entrance of the middle school, which didn't have a secure front vestibule. We've added surveillance cameras all along, so you can watch children. In fact, the front office watches them on a monitor as they leave the portable and come to the front. There's buzzer systems to get in and out. The doors are always locked. They're only open and closed during those little quick passing periods, and then they're locked down again. So, I mean, we've taken steps, but again, it's an imperfect science. So.
Right. I know just as far as like the safety of the building itself, if a weapon were to be fired at the building, would it go through or would it be protected?
That's Brittany, honestly, it's what keeps me awake at night.
Yeah, I think for obvious reasons, we don't like to talk about vulnerabilities publicly. And so.
Yeah, well, yes.
I think there's an opportunity to share that, but this is not the forum.
Right. I was once asked by a school board member, what keeps me up at night? And I said, ask my wife, not much. But that's the one thing that does. I mean, I sleep the sleep of the dead when I go home, but that type of school shooting situation, I lose sleep over that.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Oh.
Sorry, let me do one more,
There's one
Jim,
more.
because just because Doug, go ahead. Doug, can you hear us? Doug?
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
All right, sorry about that. Todd, first of all, thank you very much. It was a very eye-opening presentation for me. I learned a lot about all of the different deficiencies and issues we've got. I have a couple of quick questions for you. One, do you talk to your peers in other communities around here? Do the other communities have modulars as well? You know, is Cape Elizabeth or Falmouth or Yarmouth or Saco or Westbrook, do they have modulars?
Yes, I do. And so to answer your question, yes, I do talk to my co-facilities directors around Southern Maine. And yes, a lot of them do have modulars, particularly in Gorham. They have colonies of modulars there. They've had modulars in Greeley and they're all doing what we're doing. They're all trying their best to not have them anymore. And it's a common problem in growing communities like Scarborough.
What are the sizes of the modulars in square feet? Approximately.
So I'm just gonna tell you what, this is because the way my brain works. They come in a 2-module trailer-like thing that I showed you. They're 68 feet long and about 28 feet wide. So about roughly 3,600 square feet per 2-classroom unit, because it includes a big hallway in between the classrooms.
And what does that cost?
Well,
approximately.
They're about $1 million. It's about $1 million for 2 now, all out the door. Foundation, everything fit out. When we built the ones at 8 Corners and Pleasant Hill, it was $750,000. It's gone up about $250,000 in a few years.
Okay, thank you. And then I had a question for the leadership committee. If we have questions for the school, how do we ask that? And my question would be, can the school provide us with a list of every classroom with the number of students in it and what grade it is?
Yeah, so this is Charlie. Yes, if you send that email to either SBAC or SBLT, we will take that and make sure that it gets to the school team who can work on that.
Questions in the front here.
So
unless you want to cut us.
Yeah, unfortunately, great question, Todd. Thank you so much. We've got to stop there. We just can't. So Jeff is gonna present on enrollment data. If you still have questions for Todd, what we'll do is we'll use that same format. Please email them to us. We'll get them to Todd and then we'll get responses back to you.
That presentation is available to us on PDF.
It is, it's available online already on the website.
Charlie, I just one question came to me before the meeting and it's, have we applied for state funding before? And the answer is, this is one application right here. If you want to read it, you're welcome to try it. I've got electronic copies of all of them. We applied for the last rating cycle in 17-18, and there's one for each of the primaries and the middle school right here, fresh. But they're not, you don't just dash off the application and send it in. It's months of work to put this together. So anyway, if you'd like to look at them, we do have them. I just wanted to show them because good nightstand. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Jeff Bruno, to talk to us about student enrollment.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah. And Jeff, sorry, just one housekeeping item. So the agenda has 30 minutes for this discussion. So his presentation, I believe, is going to be a bit shorter, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end as well. Please hold your questions to the end, same rules. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll keep my comments relatively brief. I did share these slides already publicly, both at the last Thursday's Board of Education meeting and also with all of you via email. What I wanted to do was, or what I was asked to do as well, is provide just some summary information, enrollment summary, kind of past, present, and future. There's so much enrollment data that's on the enrollment page on the website, including just so that the public knows and that all of you folks know, like we update our enrollment monthly, and that's shared publicly every month, both as a school, as a district, broken out by grade, broken out by school by grade, for any building. So, and that goes back, at least online, about 10 years. So the first part, if you advance the slide, the first part of these slides kind of looks backwards at some historical enrollment trends dating back to 2015. So what I did was I just took end of year numbers at each phase level across the district. And then I also included a graphical representation. A lot of times if you're looking at change over time, looking at it, using a line graph can be helpful just to kind of see the numbers in a different way so you can see how they're trending. So this first chart is just showing end of year data starting in 2015 and going through January 2024. So the most recent enrollment numbers are for the month of January in 2024. So we've got the high school, middle school, Wentworth, and then the K-2 schools, so broken out by phase, and then district totals at the bottom. So 2015 was actually when overall K-12 enrollment was at its highest, at least in recent years. We're currently at 2,858 across the district K-12 in January of 2024. And so you can see also, if we advance to the next slide, kind of how that's trended over time at the different phase levels. So our largest school, which is the high school, has vacillated a little bit up and down in enrollment. The lowest being, but it basically hovers in between 900 and roughly 1,000, or just a hair under 1,000. It's been in the 900s pretty consistently since 2015. That red line represents the middle school, which overall was at its highest in 2015 in terms of enrollment, and is at its lowest right now at January of 2024. The yellow line represents Wentworth, their grades 3 through 5, which had a pretty sharp decline in 2021. That's our hybrid COVID year, and then is recovered since then. So overall is pretty much finished where it started in 2015, currently that yellow line. And then the green line represents the 3 K-2 schools, which experienced pretty significant growth between 2018 and 2020. I think as Todd mentioned, there was actually 2 additional modulars that were added down at 8 Corners in that time period. So you can see the fluctuations in enrollment at each of the K-2 schools. But that green line represents all of the K-2 schools together collectively. Advance to the next slide. So this is the same data, same overall data, except in this case, we've broken out the 3 K-2 schools. So this separates out 8 Corners from Pleasant Hill and Blue Point. It's the same historical time period, end of the year data from 2015 until the most recent January of 2024. So if we scroll to the next slide, you can kind of see same thing, the blue being the high school line, red being middle school, yellow being the Wentworth school, and then we have the 3 separate lines for the 3 K-2 schools. So there's been one of the things of note, and some of this is just how neighborhoods have fluctuated over time. Just in the last couple of years, if you look at 2022, since COVID, the enrollment in each of our 3 schools is virtually identical in the 3 K-2 schools, whereas a little earlier it was a little different, with 8 Corners being the largest and Pleasant Hill being the smallest, just in terms of number of kids. As you saw in Todd's presentation, The lot sizes vary a little bit, but are overall very small. And then we've had to obviously tack on beyond the renovated building envelope in 1993 to add on pretty significant percentage of the classrooms now being in modular classrooms. So if we go to the next slide. So that was the past. Where are we in the present? So this is an interesting year because for those of you who tuned in last February, we updated our long-term enrollment study, and Rebecca Wandel presented and on the website, and also linked to this presentation tonight, or these slides tonight, is her enrollment study, which is about 120 pages long and really digs in, provides multiple projection models based on births in Scarborough, based on in-migration trends, out-migration trends, based on the degree of development, single-family homes, multifamily, all of the development that's going on in Scarborough that has led to pretty significant population growth and will continue likely into the future. This is the present day right now. This was also the first year of her projected study. So if you go to the next tab here, I broke this out by individual grade just to kind of take a look at what is our actual enrollment. And again, we're only halfway through the school year. So we monitor by grade level, by school, our enrollment every single month. So these numbers will continue to get updated as we go through this school year. But this is, if we look right at January 2024, the projected numbers is the first year of projections from the Wandel study from last year, broken out by grade, kindergarten, first, second, third, all the way up to 12th, and then the district totals. And then the next row underneath that, these are the actual numbers from January 2024, going from each grade level all the way up to the district totals. And then what I included underneath there is just the differential between the two. So if that differential number is positive, it means that the projection or the actual exceeds the projected number. If that differential is negative, it means the actual is below what was projected for this current school year. So right now, overall district-wide, the projections were off by about 38 kids. We're about 38 students under what was projected. The bulk of that difference is really first and second grade had the most significant kind of undercount, I guess, or under projection. Whereas at the middle school, particularly in 8th grade, as well as the 7th grade, overall the middle school has more kids than projected. So that's the comparison of the present year. And again, the projected numbers are end of the year projections. We're about halfway through. So the actual enrollment could go up a little bit between now and June, could go down, and that could change in each grade level, as you can probably imagine. That monthly numbers, like if you go onto the website and you log into the monthly enrollment numbers, you can see they fluctuate one month to the next. So we go to the next slide. So these next series of slides are the projections for the future, and doing short-term and long-term projections as we do year to year as part of is just a natural part of the budget process. Long-range enrollment projections can get very tricky. Ask anyone who did a pretty large enrollment projection right before COVID hit. That threw a lot of the numbers and a lot of the projections way off. So the numbers that I'm going to share here, there were multiple models that were shared in the Wandel study. The one that we were using the most is the best fit scenario with a COVID adjustment model. So those are the numbers that I'm sharing just as part of this summary. And again, these projections will take us out 10 years, starting with the projections from 2024, which I just shared, and then projected out to 2033. So very similar format here. I broke it out by phase level, 9 through 12, 6 through 8, 3 to 5, K to 2, and then with district totals at the bottom here. So you can see in this in this projection, if we project out 10 years, where the district as a whole, K to 12, is growing from about 2,900 students to 3,377 students in 2033. And what does that look like graphically? It's a little different depending on what phase level you're in. So if you bring up the next slide, this kind of shows the projections that that table that I just shared graphically. The high school starting about right where it is, just a little over 900, actually taking a dip over the next few years, and then growing in enrollment pretty significantly starting in 2028. Yellow again represents Wentworth, which is a pretty steady, actually pretty flat over the next several years, and then in 2029 starts to see significant growth, which makes sense given the green line, which is the primary, which is the K to 2, which as was shared as part of you know, the lead up to the vote and the previous project, really experiencing significant growth early on in the projection starting in 2026. And in between 2026 and 2029 is really where we see the first significant growth in enrollment in our youngest kids at the K to 2 level. And then the middle school, that red line, is pretty flat for the most part overall. And then you'll see an uptick late in the projections, 2032 into 2033, given you can kind of see, like, if you get growth between 2026 and 2028 at the K to 2 levels, it makes sense that you're going to see a similar delayed growth in the 3 to 5 grades in the Wentworth graph, because all of those K to 2 kids will now move on to Wentworth, and then Wentworth move on to the middle school, and so on. So that's a graphical representation of the trend as projected by the Wandel study last year. I'm going to advance the slides to the next one. One of the important kind of factors in looking at enrollment, either growth or decline, is comparing the number of births in a community to kindergarten enrollment. So this is all real data. This is all historical data that dating back to 2006. And then what it does is it tracks, okay, looking at births in a given year, what does the kindergarten enrollment look like 5 years later? And so what this kind of chart demonstrates, or the trend it demonstrates, is, first of all, there's pretty significant in-migration in terms of the number of kids that are born in Scarborough, and then the number of kids who are enrolling in kindergarten 5 years later. The average is actually, if we projected back, and in this case we projected back 12 years, the average number of in-migrated students between those who were born in Scarborough and those who attend in kindergarten was 56 kids. And so essentially, as you project out and start to look ahead in terms of what are our births, how many kids were born just in the last few years in Scarborough, and use that data to try and project out what that enrolled kindergarten class is going to look like. It's basically take the number of kids born in Scarborough in a given year and multiply it by 1.4 or 1.39. That's the average in terms of comparing, again, that size of the kindergarten enrolled class with the number of births in Scarborough in a given year. This next slide, again, these slides were designed to be, you know, relatively self-explanatory, so that we can share them on the website along with the other enrollment information. This just reviews basically what I just went over on the kindergarten enrollment versus the number of births in Scarborough. And the important thing to note there is that there's pretty significant in-migration trends in Scarborough. A lot of people move to Scarborough so that, you know, in time for their kids to attend school and kindergarten. And I think the historical data kind of shows that out. And one of the data points in the Wandel survey is that, you know, the number of live births in Scarborough just in the last few years have exceeded 200. So 5 years later, that is part of that pretty steep curve or steep increase in K-2 enrollment that's projected between 2026 and 2027, as shown in that line graph. Just, you know, that's a pretty reliable estimate based on the number of kids that are born in Scarborough just in the last few years. If you project that out 5 years, at least history has shown that you get a pretty significant immigration between, you know, the time where kids are born in Scarborough and we're enrolling kids in kindergarten. And then this last part of it are just some links. The first is to the full enrollment study, so all 120 pages of it. And then there's also a link to the SPS enrollment data, which is all actual, you know, our actual enrollment data present and then into the past. And then the live births, the birth data that was used as part of Rebecca's enrollment study is on maine.gov, the Division of Data Research and Vital Statistics.
Jeff, thank you very much. This is Charlie speaking. I'll kind of help call on folks and keep the questions going. I want to start with a question that came in over email this week, and it was relative to those projections and the projected town growth with the housing developments in the Downs and other places. Was that taken into consideration in the projections as more people move to the town, how that might impact these enrollment projections going forward?
Yeah, it absolutely was. And in fact, there's multiple models that's based on a high growth, a best fit, and a low growth, right? So you look at, like I said, I mean, trying to project how many kids you're going to have in a given year is not an exact science, and there's a lot of factors that are involved. But the amount of development was absolutely a big part of the analysis that Rebecca took and putting together, and that is all very, very thoroughly explained as part of that enrollment study document that's posted on the webpage. But that's a big piece of it for sure.
You have one online. Do you want to take that one first? Or
Sure. Go online. I don't see hands.
Go ahead, Doug.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you please turn to page 10?
Go to slide 10.
Oh,
Thank you. One of the gentlemen in the room asked a question about why Wentworth was not included in some of this previous work. And I heard someone said that, you know, that was not part of the overall view of what we were doing here. However, we were given earlier on in this process, a couple of weeks ago, we were given a summary of the current facilities, and it includes Wentworth, and it shows a current capacity of Wentworth of 800 students. But this chart here is showing that Wentworth by 2033 is going to need to house 868 students. So should it not be part of our study and our thought? And that's not necessarily to Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. That's to us as a group. Shouldn't we be including Wentworth?
Yeah, Doug, that's a really good point, and I'm just going to emphasize too. I mean, there has been, questions about whether or not Wentworth or expanding Wentworth, the degree to which that's been vetted. The challenge there is, and I think you've heard it a little bit here tonight. Wentworth was designed to be to allow for some expansion, a maximum, I believe, of about 8 classrooms. So foreseeing some of that even when Wentworth was built, or foreseeing some of this in terms of the facilities needs and growth and the growth of enrollment, that was a piece of making sure that there was some expansion potential on that Wentworth building. And even the school that we designed, the K-4 unified school, was also designed to have additional wings added on to it someday in the future if we exceeded the capacity. But so to your point, I think that's a critical kind of piece of the solution, is to make sure that that Wentworth is part of this, and this is really, and has, in my view, has always been a K-8, at least if you're talking about capacity and facilities issue, has been a very much a K-8, needs to be a K-8 solution.
Thank you.
All right, we've got some hands. I think I saw you were first. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, about a K-8 solution, but I think we're also need to keep in mind that we don't offer a pre-K option right now. And we know that going forward, that is something we have to consider. So I think that's also something worthy of keeping in mind, because that's something the numbers really don't look like.
Yep.
The comment was, we haven't considered pre-K either. And something we ought to consider. Yep.
So the enrollment study was done using estimated data for 2020. And because the census data was not actually released until May, and she did her presentation and wrapped it up in February. So has there been any, has the school department tried to update or validate any of that data?
I can speak to that. Yeah, actually on a regular basis, I'm connecting with the Bureau of Vital Statistics to get the birth rates for Scarborough. I'm continuing to track them in a similar vein that Rebecca did. So if you look at the birth rate sheets that Rebecca had on there, they were like October to October, because that is, students have to turn 5 by October 15th. So I wanted to maintain that. And so if you look, thank you for pulling that up. So in 2017, 2018, 142 births. If we look at 2018, 2019, that number increases to 162. I can make this available to people. 2019, 2020 was 151 births in Scarborough. And 2020, 2021, which is the students that would be coming to us in 2026, which is, kind of what precipitated most of this discussion. The number of live births in that year was 174. In 21, 22, the number of live births was 204. And for 2020, 22, 2023, the number of live births was 207. So we can see that beginning in October of the school year that begins in 2026, we are definitely on an incline. And if we look at using, either the average of in-migration numbers or the ratio, you can quickly do the math on that to see that, we'll be, the year that we have 174 students will be somewhere in the range of actually 230 kindergarten students coming. For the year that we had 204 live births, will be somewhere in the range of 260. And for the last full year that we have on record of 207 live births, will be somewhere in the range of 263. So these are real numbers. These are no longer projections, right? Because these babies have been born to families here in Scarborough. And so, you know, I think that that does cause a sense of alarm in terms of we can almost see them signing up and registering for school, right?
Rush those mommies, they're.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Diane, and if we could go back to that slide that has the graph of the projections. Yeah, that one. Yeah, what Diane was just saying is what you see in that green line, right? So that's the K-2 projections. And so, you know, I forget, what was the first year where there were 200 births in Scarborough?
That was in 2021, 2022 births, which would be beginning in 2027 for school.
Yeah, so you see right there, 2026 is when the ramp starts at the K-2 level, right? That's where we're getting our most significant growth and enrollment is at the K-2 levels with all those live births. Projecting out based on pretty reliable historical trend data, you know, that's when we're going to get a pretty significant bump in those kindergarten and first and then second grade classes.
And so in addition to tracking those live births, the other thing that I do on a regular basis is I've been tracking the in and out migration of students on an annual basis so that we look at how did we end the school year in June, and then in August, we look at who's enrolling in and who's leaving, and we're even tracking it to where are they leaving to go? Are they going to another school in the state? Are they going out of state? Are they going to a private school? Are they going to homeschool? So we've really been monitoring things as closely as we can so that we can see whether or not these projections are holding true.
So we've got 3 minutes left for Q&A and 7 minutes left for the meeting, so just for awareness. So ma'am, I think I saw you first and then we'll try to get to you before we close.
I guess it would piggyback what you were just saying. Are you able to correlate the amount of development in this town, residential development, with those numbers?
So that is probably a question that's better served for Tom, because again, like the number of building permits and so on and approved developments isn't the work of the school department.
Well, I was thinking if you knew where these kids were coming from, you could tell whether they're from new homes or new apartments or.
Sure.
Yeah, and to piggyback that, to table that question for another committee, whatever, is what is the impact that the development that's happening and going to happen, what is their financial impact or contribution to this whole process? And that's a question I don't want you to answer now, but I just want to make sure it's always someone there, somewhere in the discussion.
So just very quickly, my staff worked very closely with their consultant in understanding the sort of development that was either in the pipeline, or we even went so far as to look at current zoning and designated growth areas and did some very detailed work around that. And no surprise, but the biggest takeaway is the number of bedrooms you're building in terms of predictor of school age kids. And now, of course, the school district knows exactly where their kids come from. So at any moment in time, we can tell you whether a particular development is producing any school kids, and if so, how many and what phase level. Last piece I'll just share, the last time we invested in modulars, there was a concern sometime in mid-July that all of a sudden we get 90 new kindergartners coming, I think was the number. It was an alarming number. And we were really curious. And I think 94% of the kids coming in came from housing stock that was 5 years old or older. So it was the turnover of existing single family homes. So there's a lot of dynamics. And I hope there's a subcommittee that really wants to know more and better understand what the consultant did.
And that's done.
So, sir, I think you.
So my question related to that, with the migration numbers, we've got in and out, some canceling out is happening. So I think we're gonna need to see the migration numbers, birth numbers, migration numbers, and projected head count units, bedrooms that are built out through 2033. that'll allow us to take into consideration 3 categories: migration, births, and building permits.
So I know there's a lot of questions on this, and I hate to shut it down, but we do have to move on just in trying to get to an adjournment on time. We're gonna, same rules apply here, so please send your questions in. We'll try to address them. There is a subcommittee specifically to study the enrollment data and get to a lot of the crux of some of these questions and try to deep dive that. So, Jeff, thank you very much. I'm gonna move us to the next agenda item, and that is the formation of subcommittees. And so, Nick, I believe you were gonna talk here, subcommittees.
Do we have anything we can put up there?
What's that?
Do we have anything to put up there? April, can
Who should I email it to?
I look at it on your computer?
Yeah.
So there's a couple subcommittees that is this posted on the Google Drive? These need to be posted to the Google Drive, but so 5 subcommittees, I'll give you a quick flavor of it. Enrollment, the committee description, it's data validation, so we set a discussion on it. You saw the data that was being presented. We want to make sure that we have the accuracy, the reliability, the completeness of the provided enrollment information, which will enable effective decision-making regarding facilities management and future programming needs. Some of the tasks of that subcommittee: complete a review of the most current enrollment data projections, analyze trends and make a recommendation to the full committee for use as the agreed upon enrollment projecting count for further use in subcommittees and final recommendations. Questions which we would like answered in the report from the SBAC. Which of the 4 projected housing, projected models, a best fit model, best fit plus COVID adjustment, housing impact model, or housing impact high model? You read the enrollment study, they did 4 different methodologies of trying to track enrollment. We want to know which one this committee would recommend is used for everyone else, what is agreed upon. Which, another question we would like answered: which schools will be beyond existing capacity? Which schools have capacity available to accommodate future enrollment? Those are just some basic questions that we think a subcommittee should focus on, that we would like to see reported out. That subcommittee, when you form, you're gonna have other questions, and we want to know what they are, and we want you to have them answered. But as a baseline, this is what we kind of expect for that core work to center on, okay? There's a benchmarking and programming. I know we had it kind of separated out. Initially, I think combining those 2, just based on the overlap we were seeing with some of the descriptions, would make sense. So a benchmarking and program committee. The committee description is understand the competitive environment, determine what the best practices in the educational environment are, understand requirements and norms of the modern educational environment. Your tasks: evaluate best educational practices and programming, determine what, if any, additional programming is needed, make a recommendation as to class sizes, educational footprint designs, understand restrictions and requirements, state and federal mandates that impact classroom sizes, educational and recreational spacing and programming needs. What are non-negotiable items? Spacing for special ed services, gym and cafeteria needs, etc. So you need to identify those. Understand where we are currently deficient and where we will likely be deficient in the future. Create a recommendation that addresses the opportunities and deficiencies. There are questions we would like answered by that subcommittee. How does Scarborough compare to programming offered versus other municipalities? Are there opportunities for improvement, and what are they? Are there obsolete practices that can be eliminated? How do programming and benchmarking play a role in the ultimate design physical space requirements needed for Scarborough going forward? And what do you recommend be included in any future construction initiative and why? Building Infrastructure Committee, it's another subcommittee. Committee description: review and report on the physical condition of the K-2 and middle schools. The tasks: conduct a review of the physical infrastructure of Blue Point, 8 Corners, Pleasant Hill, and the middle school. Conduct a review of the restrictions and opportunities for expansion on each property. Develop a list of improvement and renovations that will be made at each facility as they currently sit. This should contain different categories with prioritization schedule and cost estimates. Coordinate with the finance subcommittee regarding your findings and obtain a more complete financial picture. Questions that we want answered from this committee on that subcommittee: what is the cost to bring current buildings up to code? What additional costs will be incurred during the process of bringing buildings up to code? That assumes additional redistricting, space rental, busing, whatever it might be, transportation. What is the cost to add the appropriate security measures to each building? Which schools are currently deficient in physical spacing needs, and is there a possibility to address those needs on the existing property? What is the difference between space allocation and enrollment numbers? So those are just some of the questions we want that committee to start answering. Communications subcommittee, that can be found in the charter. It's pretty straightforward. We need and I think we already have people signed up. How many was that?
That committee's formed.
Yeah. Awesome. So you already know what you're doing. For anyone else in the room, they're gonna act two ways. They're gonna be our main communication vehicle outside of this room to the general public. They're also going to be fielding the questions from all of you internally, best organizing it and bubbling up what needs to come up this way to the leadership team. And then finally, we have a business case subcommittee. So basically, we're asking this committee to review the business case that was presented in 2023. The task, conduct and review and advise on the following aspects of the business case: the data assumptions, construction cost projections, the final assumption, space allocation and needs analysis. Questions we want answered is, do you have concerns about any of the assumptions made in the business case? Would you recommend changing any of the assumptions in the business case? Is the business case supported by the findings of this and other subcommittees from a data standpoint? How do the identified solutions compare to one another? For example, renovation of 3 schools versus 4 schools versus consolidation. Again, that's just a starting point for that committee. Finance subcommittee. Committee description: conduct a review of the financial assumptions, tasks, review construction cost projections, review operational cost projections and assumptions for each scenario, review financing bond cost projections, provide a comparative analysis. Questions to be answered in the report from the SBAC. What, if any, cost projections do you agree or disagree with, and why? From what financial standpoint only? Provide a summary and cost estimate for each scenario that takes into account all aspects of varied solutions, consolidation, renovation for school. What assumptions need to be made, need to be updated to reflect the current financial climate? That's just the flavor. All of that will be put onto the Google Drive and presented. Lots of questions. I'll let Charlie take it.
So what we'll do, I will take your questions.
Okay.
What we'll do with this, because we're at time today, is, and that was a lot and we didn't have it on the screen, so probably hard to digest. That'll be emailed out. It'll be available on the webpage. What we'll ask you to do is review each of those, which ones are the most interested, where do you think that you can contribute the best, and email the SBLT. We'll compile and separate and form, and make sure that we have balanced committees and we have enough people on each one. Our next meeting is tours, so we actually have a little bit of time to get those organized and structured, and then the work of those subcommittees will start. So we have a little bit of time. So that's that. I think that's probably at this point the only way we can get it organized. So, yes,
I'd like
sir.
to make a motion. Motion is that we add Wentworth School to the building committee's building structures subcommittee.
I think when the subcommittee is formed, you can have that discussion, maybe?
Well, it's saying, what you're saying right now is the subcommittee is gonna look at K-2 schools and the middle school. I've got a bug up my rear end, that, about Wentworth School being looked at.
Can you clarify the motion for me? Is your motion to have a subcommittee specific to Wentworth, or to add
No,
Wentworth?
the subcommittee that's looking at the schools to add Wentworth to the list of schools.
We have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I would just say that I agree that it would be part of a subcommittee. I mean, if you're finding, what if the subcommittee finds you're not deficient in any of the spacing needs for primary schools, for example? I know that's ridiculous, but let's just say that happens. Why would you spin your wheels and look at one if you didn't realize, if you didn't have a spacing problem? So I think it's gonna be a natural progression that you're going to start looking at options in these subcommittees. I'm just not sure you need to officially mandate it as part. I think it's a progression.
Well, it just seems like it's always eliminated from every discussion we've had.
I think if I understand your motion, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think the question is to simply add into that scope that you just laid out, a nod to Wentworth to also understand the opportunity there. Did I capture that right?
Right.
So it's not necessarily to deep dive into Wentworth. It's really just about what options do we have at Wentworth. Any other discussion? Yes, sir.
Well, I just want to comment that I don't think looking at Wentworth is spinning wheels. Because we agreed at the beginning of the program, we're starting from ground zero. And Wentworth really should be equally supported or represented.
Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor? All opposed? One, motion passes.
I will make that editorial change
Thank
before
you.
this goes out to the full committee.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you be on more than one committee or?
I think we've discussed it a little bit. I think that people are gonna want to be participants in multiple ones. I think logistically that will be challenging. I think at this point, let's put your name in both, which ones you want. As we see the numbers come in, if we only have one or two members of a certain committee and you're one of those, we might ask you to focus your efforts there. So I think at this time, you nominate yourself for multiple if you're interested in multiples. Any other questions about that process and how we do subcommittees? Okay, so the last agenda item was to review the survey results Leanne has put together. Just to clarify, so we're only looking at the results of this body, not the town results. I think we're gonna have to table that so we can close on time. So we'll we're at 8:07, so we're already 7 minutes beyond time. Yes, sir.
Can you publish those for us though?
Yeah. Is there, right? We can just.
They'll be on the-
So I think again, I think we can put those out, so people can see the presentation, see the raw data, and then we can add that we'll table this for a future agenda item. Nick?
Quick comment on the survey. We know you all took it here and that was kind of an exercise for us. If you get one in the mail, we need you to still fill it out. Because the mail is the one that is statistically valid and counts. So don't think like, oh, I already did this. Like, please do it again if it ends up in your mailbox. And not everyone's gonna get it in here, but somebody will.
When is that again?
When will it start arriving?
Yeah.
Expect one.
No, I would expect next week they'll start to show up.
Yes, sir.
Make a motion to adjourn.
We're gonna do,
we
hold
need-
on, we have public comment and
Oh,
then
I'm
we have a
sorry.
request from staff.
I
Just
withdraw
real
that
quick.
motion.
No worries, thank you.
This form we need to finish, we need to sign it in order to get.
Thank you. Yes, so before we get to public comment, Diane?
Yes, so, as we said at the top of the meeting, a Google shared drive has been set up for all of you to be able to do your work as subcommittees and for those documents to be in one place. In order for you to access that, we do need you to sign this agreement. It's a very standard agreement that we ask all of our district users, because you are going to be interacting with our district Google Drive. So we just need to make sure that everybody is in compliance. The other thing that I would just mention is we do have school tours set up for next week. And so we have middle school set for 6 p.m. and 8 Corners set for 7 p.m. We certainly can organize tours to any of the other schools at a different time, but as the steering committee discussed, it would be really challenging to try to go at any quicker pace around more schools in one meeting time. And Todd Jepson will be taking you around to each of the 2 schools along with the building leaders of the school, so that Todd will be able to speak from a facilities perspective on some of the things that you saw this evening. And then our building leaders will be able to speak from an educational perspective.
What day is that gonna be?
It's in place of this meeting, guys.
Oh, in place of this meeting.
So are we meeting there? Like,
Which was the first school?
Middle school.
I was gonna, suggest that it's such a large group to go everyone to the middle school or everyone to 8 Corners. Is it possible that we could split in 2 and like each?
The challenge with that is we have one Todd Jepson, one facilities director, and he is the, consummate expert when it comes to all of our buildings. And so I would just feel like we would be falling short with one of the 2 groups not getting that full picture. So I absolutely hear what you're saying, but we don't have 2 Todds.
So for next week, and we'll send this out on email, but we will meet at the middle school.
Correct.
at 6 o'clock instead of here. Sir?
So for those of us who've been in these schools, at least we, with our, kids, and do we need to like, if I've already been in middle school, I've been in it enough. Do I need to go to that and where I want to go to Eight Corners because I've never been in that school, so I don't know what the dynamics are there? So can we pick and choose which ones we want to go to?
Yeah, that's fine. I think the only thing that you risk is perhaps some of the mechanical services that are deficient that he'll talk about, but. Okay, I'm gonna open it up for public comment. We have none. Anything online? Nothing? Close for public comment. Close, public comments closed.
Motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, guys.
See, Nick, I came to life for you. I came to life for you, Nick, making motions.
I was right now.
No, my son turned 10 today. And we had a whole family party, but I had 2 kids. I thought, you know what, I
Plan
Traffic complaints.
No, I've seen them.
There's some play they've been doing. I've got to get volunteers there to weasel traffic into the communities. And then get them across the crosswalk. Really questionable. Okay? Two Corners, mecca of homelessness for several years. When they started clearing that woods out, right, there was 20 people living in that area.
That is wild to me. I've been hearing that more
And there was
often.
half the spot.
Wasn't there a guy recently living in that trailer?
Yeah, what is the storage thing?
Yeah,
Goes on with
shipping
the mask,
yeah.
that Maersk or whatever it is.
Yeah.
He had a.
It's wild.
And,
You guys must like go to these things and like coordinate yourselves.
let me show you this picture. You're not gonna believe this.
I got a question for you. And again, I think it would want to shut down the security programs because that's the last thing I talk about in public. But really, like from a law enforcement standpoint, schools and like those targets, are you worried about people like just shooting guns like that in the building, or are you more worried about getting access in?
Yeah,
It's funny to hear me say it out loud. That's what you see in the news.
But I mean, if we're sitting at these windows.
Well, that was my question, is like, I think it's a legitimate thing, and I just don't know. I was gonna say the tail.
And so they were talking to him. How many times did he bite you? I think 3 times. I'm like, shouldn't we call the game wardens? Because isn't that more of an offense to the animal than the guy? This is
That's wild.
This is within a stone's throw of the school. These people. Now, mind you, they have moved on, and between social services and other vouchers and stuff. But so that's gonna it's just like penny. Penny's gonna come in.
Oh, you know that's good.
I think that's all. That's all. That's not business. That's not business. So,
you guys can only control so much.
Walmart and Martin's could have a problem on a daily basis. Yeah, I call it the Bermuda Triangle. Walmart, Plaza, and June. So where'd your children go to school?
I got one in Pleasant and I will say in the mornings for me, because I drop off the child at 5. Maybe I she's out, and it's gotten much better over the last couple
I
of years.
remember being there and watching cars line up down the Highland Avenue.
It does that now on pickup. And so
Yeah,
at the end of the
yeah,
day,
yeah, yeah.
that's where,
Okay,
and
that's
it's
heavy.
all coming in that direction, like by, coming up. So like you're going towards South Portland.
So, very limited parking.
It's a mess there.
Staff is out front, parent visitors, that read books and stuff, and you got the teachers out
Their houses were built after the school.
Did you know that this year in the, so.
So then,
In their yard, scared like a storm. No, a little. I said, I had to leave.
That's helpful just to see. But the problem is I don't think.
It's in your script. It's gone.
But no, I agree with you.
Is that the document we're supposed to sign? February 2nd?
We need to keep recording for the leadership team.
But it's this one, right? It's this computer?
I believe so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Amber, grandma's photo from Florida, and I was like, oh, she's so adorable. These are my. If you would like to sign, I would love to.
I've never signed a sign.
That's never happened.
All right, I'll see you, are you gonna be giving the torch?
It's out the door.
Yeah.
I don't believe you have a chance tomorrow.
But there's the same.
I know there is, but
I'll show you what.
I'm gonna try to go to.
To go to here, but I think I saw your written comments. I did. Yeah, they're very substantive. Yeah, I'm being difficult here, I'm just, I gotta check with consultancy and see if there's opportunity for us.
That's right on the top of my hill.
You guys are volunteers who come out for things like that.
I don't take you away, but
I'll drop you a note, I'll check with the consultant.
Because she actually made him do it.
I love your reaction.
No, I can tell you.
You are. You're like, I know.
Yes. I'll circle back tomorrow, okay?
Love her.
All right. So, see you next week.
Yes, see you next week.
You're very welcome. Just first, as a group, do we want to meet this week now? Or have a Zoom call later in the week to kind of work through the next meeting is really the
Right.
I think the new business would be the process for the subcommittee formation. Get that document posted.
Yeah, I feel like we need to post a document, we probably need to have some like spreadsheets for people to sign up for that meeting.
Form, so it populates the, I mean, I feel like here's your name. know, top
What are
choice,
the-
second
right.
choice, third choice, like whatever.
Absolutely.
You know,
And then it would populate it all for us, it would be so easy to read versus
right.
reading
I was,
50 emails.
I volunteered to handle the emails.
Oh, that's obviously way smarter, that
I love when a better idea comes along.
It's probably even more like too sophisticated for me, like literally just a spreadsheet with the committee name and people sign up underneath it.
You know what they do is they populate into a spreadsheet.
Okay.
You don't even have to create a spreadsheet.
Okay.
It does it right for you. It just, all it does is
And
like.
I do kind of like the idea of
Then you're
people
making-
having anonymity.
Right, then you're
in
making
their
any
planning
smarting
decision
Okay.
versus like, oh, I wanna work with you, so let's get on the same.
Yeah,
committee. I
and
saw
then-
your name.
Right, and then you get the same, you get a little.
Alright, who's doing it?
So I can make it.
Thank
So what do you do? 5 minutes, like, would it be like type your one option, like the one you picked or wanted?
We could do like a, you could say
First
option
option
one.
option two, option three.
Yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah, probably. And then that way they have, if they wanna sign up, if they wanna leave the third one blank, or if they wanna put the.
I'm with Tom.
Yeah. I was gonna say, that would
There's no
worry.
way they can serve on three.
No, oh, no,
Oh,
we
no,
were
it'd be
saying.
first options,
Choices, meaning if we get one committee that has 27 people sign up, we may have to go to people's second choice.
Right.
And you can use second in such a way that you can only pick for number one.
Yeah.
I would love to see a statement on there, background, experience in any of these, please, think about that when you're serving. Right, because some people might be in like really excited about the partnering aspect of it, but if they've got like a background in finance, like, we would love to see the finance.
Right, yeah.
I'm sure.
We'll all do is I'll just put a shelf together.
Oh, yeah, you wouldn't have wanted to leave.
And when we're, like, I wouldn't force a third option, because I feel like once you get down to 3, there's a chance they're really not interested in 3, it's like the best of the worst at that point, so like, you want people doing good work, maybe 2, so that they can, and then if we have, again, 2 that have 27, we can be like, okay, guys, we gotta really think about splitting them.
And so there's some, I heard the discussion that maybe some people would like to serve on more than one. I think that we just pop a question in there. Talk.
That's all, so it's just.
Yeah, right, yeah.
5 committees and options to advance.
So we're not, we don't want to talk, but if you're meeting here.
Yeah, if you're doing breakouts in this room, I mean, you said.
Sounds like
It's
that's
gotta be
all
hard. Call
Yeah,
this.
I think we just have to put it.
No, I think the other one's the meeting room, this was.
We're looking at 2 1, first and second choice. Yeah.
Are we assigning it, the road that comes over?
Assigning what?
Are we assigning the actual committees?
I think we have to see how they work out, right?
Right, because if it breaks down.
I don't think it, I mean, I'll defer to you guys who do this for a living, but to me, I don't think it should be prescriptive of specific people and specific ones. We let them choose where their interests are. And but we identify that there's like, there's a committee that only has, 1 or 2 people on it, we gotta address that.
Right.
I saw your body language, what's your thoughts?
No, you're right.
Okay.
I was.
I just had this evil thought. Thanks for plugging.
So, do you want us to make sure we're all divided?
I think we should all also fill out the Google form.
Yeah.
Yeah, the good news is there might be 2 of us or 2 of you on each of the committees, so that's gonna help you.
I think I heard that earlier tonight, should we clean up that list, the committee list? We have absentees, we have people that resign, should we just top meeting, just clean it up so we know who's voting first?
Well,
Yeah,
no, please. go ahead.
I mean, I just wanna make sure that anybody here that knows any of those people reaches out, one person who I know too, she hasn't been, but she's been enough, wants to be involved, just wasn't able to. I mean.
Hasn't been able to make Mondays work so far, but
Yeah.
has watched the meetings and looked at the minutes.
Yeah.
Has at least been in contact with us, so as long as those are excused absences, which as far as I'm concerned, they are, she does not need to be removed. I think it's more just people who have totally just cut and posted. We just need to identify those.
clean it up. We continue to have email issues. I get it, you know, I got one at 6:30, like I can't get on a meeting. I assume that that person's marked absent. I don't know if she ever got on. And I don't know how to fix that situation.
Well, I think that's one of the challenges with, you know, people signing up to do the meeting in a hybrid format. Unfortunately, we can't, you know, necessarily support and troubleshoot for each member in time, right? We certainly can work with those individuals offline, not in a meeting. Or if there are other folks who may not be members of the committee who want to watch the meeting, it is also, you know, live streamed on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. So I think.
So I mean, I haven't even seen how we use the attendance so far, right? We're taking it, we're keeping track, but like anybody sitting in the room, I don't know if they're voting members or not, you know, unless they self-acknowledge. So at what point, you know, they can't be members of subcommittees, right? They can just observe the subcommittees.
Right.
So.
How did they get excused?
I mean, yeah, is there a formal, you're no longer a member, you know?
Yeah, I don't know, I would suggest you go to the, you say you've already exceeded your number of absences, you're gone. If they haven't been part of it, they're not likely to show up midstream, much less the 11th hour. Just let bygones be bygones. Yeah, I hope at the end of this is done by consensus, that it's not, you know, roll call vote, contentious right down to the person. I might be wrong, but I'd like to think this is going to be covered by consensus without much contention.
I'm an optimist with you, Tom.
Me too. So then I guess the takeaway that I'm kind of hearing and seeing people nodding is just, for right now, it's probably not something that we need to bring up. We'll keep an eye on the numbers, and if we start to dwindle to a point where we're like, okay, we're down to, you know, 30 people who are coming or 25, then we need to say, okay, like, who's gonna be actively voting as we get closer to the hour here.
But there's two groups though, right? There's people who have formally resigned and said, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
And there's others who just, for whatever reason, haven't been able to make it work.
Yeah, you had 4 resigned and 2 withdrew before the first meeting, so.
The other item, I think, since we don't really have a lot of agenda work to do today, is the gentleman, and I think correctly noted, we ought to get some communications out regarding the survey. If those are gonna start hitting people's mailboxes in a week or so, we ought to start the public information campaign to let them know it's coming, what its purpose is and things like that. He suggested a cover letter should have gone out with them. I think we're too late for that, but it did.
A cover letter goes out with the survey.
Yeah, Jeff wrote it.
If people open the survey, it has a letter explaining.
But still, I think we have
Yeah.
to do some broad general communication.
Well, the communications meeting is Wednesday. And so I'll just make sure. And you're the liaison to that? Yes. They don't report to their meeting. So if you get something like Friday to hear. They might already have a week, right?
Yeah, I think this is the line this week.
Yeah.
You know better. than
I don't
us.
have anything yet, and yeah. If they don't meet until Wednesday, they could get something in Friday.
Yes, it's not gonna be landing in the mailbox this week, so I'll confirm with the consultant, I assume it's next week, in which
Yeah.
case, I think we
Yeah,
probably
if they
have time,
send
let's
something
plan
to-
on something.
Yeah, if the communications committee could
Friday.
get something to the editor by the 15th, it will run the week that they start hitting news mailboxes. Then we'd be concurrent, like you might get your leader and your survey, so. Even better. There you
And
go.
then we also like put it on the signage at town hall once we know that it is.
Once
hitting
it's out there.
mailboxes.
Yep.
Great, right?
Although that worked better, remember, we're sending it to households, so I think it can be confusing. You know, residents may be looking for it, expecting it, and then they weren't selected. I do expect we'll open up to the general public. When we do that, I think out here on the marquee would be good.
We have a town council communications committee meeting on the 13th. I'm happy to add a single discussion point agenda to the end of that, just to ask Allison if she can make sure that it gets a little social media attention on the town side.
On Prime the Pump, so
Yep.
she's ready.
Great, thank you. Yep, I can.
So my last note is just a general question, with next week being a field trip, is that an official meeting? Are we subject to the same kind of agenda and order of operations and stuff? Okay.
Yeah, you could, like, just, 6 PM, middle school, 7 PM, just for people who weren't here.
Well, I think we need to put out an email at least with the logistics of, where to go, where to meet. We meet, I'm assuming in front of the main entrance and then caravan to the other school, just the logistics stuff.
Who's taking that, by the way? Just make sure.
I assumed it would be Charlie
To do what? What am I doing?
to
Send that email?
send that email.
I'll just coordinate with you, Diane, on,
Yep.
make sure I have all those.
Yeah,
logistics
no,
right.
it's pretty straightforward, right? Like we chose 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock, so then that way that gives 45 minutes at the middle school, 15 minutes for, it doesn't take 15 minutes to get to Eight Corners, right? But
reassemble.
sometimes people, might be talking in the parking lot or that sort of thing. So then if we could be at Eight Corners, 7 PM. And we chose those two schools because they are close enough to one another.
Is, I imagine there's gonna be a ton of questions as we walk. I think we have to kind of help Todd keep on track, keep on moving. At some
And just
point.
as a reminder, we will be in school board budget meetings
Yeah.
next week, which is why we had
Right.
selected that date. So, so school officials and school board members will be otherwise occupied.
You're going to that?
I will until 6.
Oh, up until 6, okay.
Probably the biggest problem to people in the back of the crowd won't hear.
I think they'll be able to hear it. The spaces are small enough. And, Todd, can carry his voice quite well, and I think I would like to think that our building principals can as well, definitely. If you've worked in education for any period of time, you've got a house teacher voice.
But I think someone in each group needs to control the questions, so like one person who just doesn't.
Yeah, that's a
dominate
great
the whole
point.
Conversation. If you say you had your question, there's others, or you have to think about that,
Yeah.
because that possibility exists.
No, you raised a really good point, Annalee. I think that if folks on this steering committee could assume that role so that our building leaders and Todd can just focus on the content and someone else can drive in terms of, pointing out who's, in what order people ask questions.
Well, that maybe it just becomes like a come talk to us, we will write down all the
Capture
questions,
Absolutely.
have a notebook with us, not that I'll be there. And then at the end, look at Todd and be like, okay, these are the questions, or Todd and principals, these are the questions we've got, and just hand them the book and they can
Yeah,
just.
we have done these tours multiple times, and so I think that, Todd and our building principals are very comfortable with people asking a question when they're in a certain location, right? Because if you're asking a question about the boilers, it's probably best that you get the answer while you're in the boiler room, right? So that if there's something that Todd can point out.
Yeah, that's the point. I wouldn't tighten it down so much.
Yeah.
This is intended to be informative, right?
Right.
To the extent you can, but it doesn't disrupt the flow.
I think we just kind of have to use our judgment on the fly,
Yeah.
like, okay, hey, we gotta go to the next stop.
I don't have another.
Fair enough, I was just thinking we could get caught into 40 minutes on one topic.
Well, and that's where
Getting all
I
the way
think,
through the
that's where I think we just go, oh, hey,
We help out.
Yeah.
Write your questions down.
We talk about the agenda for the following week.
now, we can, or we can,
Most of subcommittee work, isn't it?
it's subcommittee work, but there are a few things, I think, we said after the tours was really the last step of the baselining phase, and then we're gonna revisit the problem performance objective and see if it still applies as we drafted it. And I think some. So yeah, I mean, we're really.
So the idea is like people come in with like their subcommittee assignment, like they fill out a Google poll, like put into it, they now have one, it's now, okay, go to a different part of the room. Okay.
Yeah. I think we'll want to, have a little bit of just every one of those subcommittee sessions and some house cleaning, housekeeping items at the beginning, probably 15 minutes on the agenda, and then that's very good.
I did have someone as they were walking out ask about access to the Google Drive. And again, we're having committee members sign for that access. I understand, the interest from the public about the purview as I'm thinking about it, like in terms of how we operate with school board and how the town council might operate. I think that's where perhaps asking the subcommittees to keep minutes. So then those could be posted. I just don't I'm just having a hard time picturing how, from a security standpoint, we could share a dedicated drive with the general public.
No, I don't think you need to. I do.
So I'm just trying to think, how else can we satisfy that?
I think my suggestion is if you use this time to break up the committee session, you reserve 10 minutes at the end to have committees report out, and to have a protocol, give us your takeaways.
Have that be
the next
recorded, maybe
steps.
have a note kind
And
of
then-
document that we share with all of the
I don't know if you need minutes,
subcommittees.
you do it in a public setting, you get.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean, they would be part of our.
Yeah.
Why don't we just plan to either, we're touring on Monday, but maybe we just plan for a 30-minute Zoom call next week after the tours, see what came up and between now and then to finalize that agenda, because I do think that we're gonna have to give them some guidelines, to how to structure their committees, right? Somebody's gotta take minutes, we are gonna ask you to do a report out at the end of the session. And so that I think there are some agenda items we wanna put together for.
I would say if they report out, the committee's minutes could report out their takeaways. It's just the broad brush of what occurred over the last 45 minutes. That should be sufficient.
I think we do need some homework before we break them out down into subcommittees and what their initial subcommittee meeting should consist of. Who's gonna lead the discussion? Who's gonna start you should have a discussion about what documents you think you need in front of you. Do you need access to personnel from the school department? Like, they should be thinking about those things in their initial meeting. What do we need to be set up to do our work? Maybe we want to put out a brief outline and say, as a subcommittee, is your initial meeting, you should probably be answering these questions in turn and figure out how you're gonna operate. Just give them some structure. I don't think.
I'd like to manage expectations in terms of how we can support their work, because some of it is quite.
Yeah.
They can cancel a request, but adding it late is a.
So why don't we plan for a Zoom session, mid next week, Tuesday or Wednesday or so, just to put some of those guidelines together, and then we'll craft.
Sounds like there's two basic pieces for that next meeting. One would be to revisit, to talk about the subcommittees, get that understood, and maybe give them time to break out and start to kind of organize themselves. But do you want to revisit the problem statement again?
We haven't, we've drafted it, and it's not been adopted. So I put it at the end of the baselining phase. It seemed like that made the most sense for when we should adopt it.
It makes sense for the subcommittees to understand, for everyone to understand, and go their separate ways with that being the touch point.
The other thing is, I did see, did you draft that report template?
Yeah.
So he's done initial work on an outline for the report. And that might be good to introduce to them as well. So as they're working, they can start to think about what the final report might look like.
My suggestion is keep that close. It's hard enough writing with 10 of us writing a report, much less having 70 contribute to it.
Yeah, that's why I was proposing when we brought up the Google Drive that actually it's just the BCLT and then maybe the subcommittee chairs who are authors, and everyone else can have maybe viewing rights. And honestly, I wouldn't be opposed if anybody in the public wanted to have viewing rights, because I think there's people that are maybe not part of here that want to read what's going on, but yeah, I don't think you can have 70 authors and people that are unfamiliar with Google Drives and comments.
You know, if members of the leadership team are on each of the committees, it sounds like one or two of you will be on each of them.
Yeah.
I think that's the liaison back to the health board. I'm not looking to freeze people out, I'm just trying to, done this before, and it's really hard when you get a lot of.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I will admit my own lack of skill and apprehension. I have this subcommittee's document that Nick and Leanne and Julian and I had kind of worked on, that Nick read from tonight, and I don't even dare drop it into the drive because I'm not sure what the permissions are or what anybody wants the permissions to be, so it's still just sitting on my computer, and I would appreciate,
So I wonder if we
Like,
have all
even
of those
just what
go
to do
through
next.
James, right, as the content manager? People
send it to you.
Yeah, it's fine with me. I mean, you can also just, you know, drop it into the. But actually, I just got access to it and I just created all of it, so just send it to me, I'll put it in there, but then I'll
That's all. I mean, I can see all the drop down and I can see all
You
the
can see 'em?
folders,
Okay.
yeah, and I didn't have that a little bit ago, so that's great.
Yeah.
But now I am like nervous to drop this in there, because I don't know who has permissions and access and who can edit and whatever, and so that's just, I
Well,
just don't,
I think right now, we're the only people with access.
that's correct, okay.
And from that document, Jillian and the volunteer, people, that you're gonna create the Google form, I guess, where folks would indicate their priorities. But they'll be able to see what those charges are.
Yeah, we can link that document, right?
That's a piece that can go out to them. So we expect to have those results and to share those the next time we can meet as a group.
Yeah, I think that, I actually think we'll have some business on, not the 18th, maybe after the 18th would be the 24th, to just sort of, you know, formalize those and then, like I said, just kind of lay out the lane lines for the subcommittees and then set them to work. I think they'll probably get a little over an hour worth of time to focus and self-organize.
Just make sure you were cool with something that came up in the meeting today, that you were assigned to do all of the communication emails.
Yeah, so. Well, yeah, so.
Okay, I wasn't there.
Your counterpart in the committee, she was like, oh, we're doing that too, and she was like, she didn't know she was supposed to do that. I can see, I watched her reaction when they said that, so. She was sitting here, I don't know her name, but she volunteered to the group that your communications committee was meeting on Wednesday.
Oh, yeah.
And then Nick talked about kind of what they're gonna do, and when he said,
yeah. Oh,
help
okay.
organize
Yeah,
the
yeah.
questions as they come in, she was like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing that too, right, so.
Yeah, yeah, I think that it's been pretty, I think that that was pretty loose, like, right, like, I'm, if something comes in that I'm like, no.
I just wanted to make sure
Coordinate.
that you were cool with being on the call for the, so I wasn't there, so.
Okay, yeah.
And you had to say, so I was trying to.
I no, that's fine, no, thank you so much, yeah, I think we'll communicate internally, right? So, yeah,
But if somebody, my general sense was that if someone emails and says, I can't find the agenda, Jillian will just pop on and be like, here's the link to the agenda.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
I'm also trying to be like, because it's a different dynamic for the school board than it is for town council.
Oh.
School board members aren't supposed to be doing that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just making sure that,
Yeah, I mean, we have to have a conversation. Committee work is different than school.
Oh, I would agree
Hopefully the
with that.
subcommittees will be a good forum to vet some of those things, that you're not gonna get kind of the same questions, or folks are gonna assign themselves to the subject area that they're interested in, and hopefully there's vetting that happens, that the questions that come out get refined a bit, and just census.
Just a discussion point, we don't have to anchor on it do we think that there's gonna be a question that is a critical piece of information that somebody identifies that we don't know the answer to, like your staffs can't come up with it, and we're like, hey, we can't move forward until we answer that question.
Yeah, there'll be questions that we're not capable of answering.
But will they be showstopper questions? Like, are there any like, you guys have been looking at this for a long time, like, are there showstoppers that we're not?
I think so, when we get to options, people are gonna come up with options that you don't have a way to cost out until you get to phase 2. and you
Yes,
get
some of the
to
cost
phase two.
information, pricing out this option and that, but that's very specialized.
I'm really nervous about how we're gonna come up with options when we don't have, you can't. You can't put each of these out to bid right now, you can't get budgetary numbers on most of these projects, and so people aren't gonna wanna select an option until they know how much it costs. I think making a recommendation to you guys is gonna be hard.
Yeah.
You have industry pricing for.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to somebody at the beginning, right, like, when I build stores up there, it's what the engineer estimates versus what construction comes back, it's nowhere near the same, they're not in the same ballpark.
Is there, do we have a list of what's actually still available to build? Like, if we come up with this wacky, crazy, out of the kind of clouds idea, at what limitations are we with, like, is there even the land available in Scarborough to build that or do that, or do we mostly have like a full rundown of like what's available in Scarborough?
Be phase 2, so that's what I would say, like, the recommendation is that we can't accommodate under 6 space, that has to be the recommendation. Phase 2 needs to solve for, we need extra space, whether it's a brand new piece of land or acquiring land that's adjacent to existing schools. That would probably be a phase 2. But that needs to be identified here. That's.
But if this phase 1 can identify, so what schools, that footprint is different, the site demands are different. Not entirely, but just the basic size of the parcel is different. Those things matter.
We're looking for direction, right? We're not final solving.
From a cost perspective, I suspect we can probably rank order magnitude. I don't think we can be specific, it's gonna be X, here's your probable cost estimate. But in terms of rank ordering, what's most expensive and where the other ones fit directionally, it's probably the best we can expect. This is more expensive than that.
So Charlie, do we wanna meet next Tuesday or Wednesday, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to.
Okay. Yeah.
What day are you trying to set up a Zoom?
Just started that discussion, you want to throw a day out that works for you?
By the end of this, we're probably carrying around paintbrushes and paint buckets. Who's gonna shovel?
I'm actually pretty open both of those days, so.
I won't know how to attend it live. Look at what, we have a budget meeting in the morning on on the 19th. And because of that, I had to book my entire afternoon with what I was skipping out from the morning.
So we're looking at next Tuesday or Wednesday, 19th or 20th, although.
Nighttime, daytime, noontime, does it always have to be at night?
Tuesday's a little bit better for me.
We can look at Thursday as well, so that Leanne can, I don't have any strong opinion on what day we do it, I just think the occupancy.
Thursday I'm unavailable.
Tuesday, we got a 3 o'clock flight to Germany, and I'll be gone the rest of the week. It's like we can do Monday afternoon, or we can do.
Okay.
Or I can call you from
looking at my
New
schedule.
Jersey.
When did you guys land over there?
So James is only available Monday afternoon or Tuesday morning, and Leanne is not available on Tuesday.
I'll go with what he's available on.
It strikes me, you probably have 90% of your agenda already done.
Yeah, I think it will be
I
quick.
think if someone.
You wanna do it over a Google Doc and do some commenting and, kind of test drive that?
That works for me.
Do a Google Doc 101.
Now, speaking of training, how are we gonna organize that?
My husband's in IT,
Organize.
so if he can't get me through it.
You know, there was what, 8 people maybe with their hands up, 8 to 10? With their
Yeah,
hands up about
I think that when we break out to subgroups, we can take a small breakout session to a laptop and walk them through some things and then just be available to answer questions as they go along.
Just so I know, like I'm already getting like share requests from Aspect members. Are they gonna have access to like?
So as we have received those
And you'll give it
signed
to them?
agreements, Cheryl will start going in tomorrow
Okay.
and making those people have viewing privileges.
So I won't.
And then what we will also do is for those members who were not in person tonight, we will send those electronically to folks that either missed the meeting or who are online, so that we can have, that definitive. And as we get those, then people will get privileges, but
So
if we have members who choose not to sign the agreement, then they will not have that access.
So like this survey results, time permitting, so link to the presentation, I don't have access. Request access, then will it happen?
It will get published into the drive and you'll be able to get into that.
So you have request access.
I did.
Right, so
It'll go
now,
to the owner.
yeah, so now Cheryl, once Cheryl has all of our forms in, then you'll be granted access. So right now, for people who've gone home and left this meeting and are requesting access, we can't confirm that they submitted their signed form until Cheryl enters those. And so there are probably gonna be some people tonight that request access, they just have to wait until we put their paper in.
Just one note, Peter, I don't know when Peter's getting back, so he just told me he's gonna miss tonight and the 18th. He may very well want to catch up and try to get caught up before the 24th. But I think unless we can probably just catch him up over the phone.
Yeah.
So.
Good video.
Yep.
Okay, so no Zoom meeting, we're gonna try and just form the agenda via
So-
consensus Google Doc.
So I'll take a stab at drafting that next week and send it out for comment. Go that way. So, yeah, I think we can adjourn. This was an official meeting, right? So we need minutes and all that stuff.
Yes.
It's not being recorded.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Good night, all. Good night.
Thanks.
Thanks, all.
Thank you.